Because
yeah, ready?
Today, good evening, everybody in the chat room, everybody watching, and the panel, who a few more people will be joining. Today is Sunday, the 20th of August 2017, day before the eclipse. Anyway, on the panel today, so far, we have Patricia, UK, Ireland, Chris, Canada, we've got Angel from America, and we've got artists from Germany. So, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
How's everybody doing?
Hello.
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 Anyway, well,
Yeah, fine.
cool. So we're going to start off with Artis, because he's been doing a bit of researching, haven't you, Artis?
Yes, I have. So I have done some research about the monolithic structure in Germany. So I can start now. I can show you my presentation, if everything works. Let's see. There we go.
Oh yeah, we need Chris, you need to get your guitar ready for all these things, and then you can go dilling, 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 dilling.
Hey, wait a second. Oh no, please. Just a second. I had all the pictures lined up, and yeah, now it works. You can see this? I hope so.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk to you about the monolithic structure that is located in Germany, and it's basically under Frankfurt. You can see I put an arrow here because my Google Earth isn't working. I have to do it like this today. You can see here's Germany. You can see Frankfurt, and just about 50 kilometers under Frankfurt, there's a monolithic site that, not that one. And that monolithic site is very, 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 very large. And you can see already here the stones. This whole trail of stones you can see. You can see a closer view of those stones. It's just almost like a sea of stones. It's also called in German a sea of stones. And the site name is Felsenmeer in Germany. And it's translated Sea of Stones. It's the nearest city is, as I told, Frankfurt. The site is about 600 meters long, 200 meters broad, and reached up about 45 meters above the bottom of the valley, where the city, where a small village is. What I researched is that these stones, in my opinion, were pushed to Germany at the last ice age. And what they are telling you, and I don't think it's right, that the first meal was originated from a collapsed caves and medieval mines. And this place was possibly have been the oldest mine of ironstone in Westphalia, circa the 18th and 9th century after Christ, and also included red and brown hematite and calamite and green stones. It's known when the system of the caves it's not known when this mine and caves collapsed, but it's a huge speculation. They don't know for sure when it was collapsed and how it was collapsed, so it's all a big speculation what actually went on. But I think it was caused by the last ice age. And that's the thing they don't tell you, that it was so. What I also have is pictures of this place, of course, more pictures. This is a close-up. You can see they built a bridge over it because it's not almost, yeah, it's, if you walk on those stones like these people do, you're not supposed to do that. It's on your own risk, and it's if you fall between those cracks, you can fall almost 4 meters down, and that's you can really hurt yourself. So please stay on those bridges that are on the side, because yeah, you must be careful in that sort of way. But I also can tell you there's an ancient story about this site. The that legend basically explains the origin of the Vaalsermeer that this site is called, and it goes as following. The cave and the mines of this place belong to dwarves, the little people. The giant wanted to steal the treasures of the dwarves. However, the dwarves lured the giants into a trap and allowed the entry and the whole building to collapse on the giants. So all the giants were trapped, and because the dwarves were very small, they could go between the cracks and leave that side. After this all happened, the giants were buried in this site, and the gods were so angry that the giants were trashing the place of the dwarves, that the giants also themselves were turned to stone. So that's a little bit of the legend explained for you. So again, there are giants involved in an ancient story about this site. What I can show you some other pictures of this site. You can see the size of the stones that are very big all around. You can see that there are some stones are broken up, and you can see all kinds of shapes. It's of the stones. You can see how big of a site this really is. And what is fascinating, that this is also a cutout of a large pillar. You can see on the side here, it's clearly machined, very, very clear. And it's always handy to have people standing on a side like this, so you can actually see how big the columns are. This is, to me, looks very machine tooled. In the next picture, you can see another angle of that big stone. Here you can see an old painting of that structure. Here you can see some veterans of some, well, maybe they are Boy Scouts or they are military people, and just making fun of it that they could actually lift this stone. Here's an old card you can send back home of the structure, so it was very popular. You can see in actually very detailed. So if you know more about stones, you can probably tell what kind of stone this is. It's a very hard stone, as most of the people tell about that this stone is very hard. Oh, this is also a very interesting picture. You can see here those rectangular machine marks. You can see this is also looks very machined. You can see here the other part of the stone laying beside it, so that was somehow sliced off at a very sharp slice. And you can see in the other angle of that structure, you can here see those teeth marks. And what Chris was pointing out to me, if I understand you correctly, is if you put those machine cuts in there like this in a row and you put wedges between them, you could probably split the stone and get some kind of sawing device between them, and actually after you can cut those stones, but this is very, very smooth. If you look at it, okay, you can see this is very smooth, and then you can see some kind of machinery So this was probably the inlay of the saw that was very smooth, and after that you can see some scooping device, because here you have a scoop and this is almost the same size of a scoop in the stone. You can
They
see
actually knocked it off, if you ask me.
sorry?
They made a saw, then they put the wedges in it, and the wedges actually break the stone off. So what you see is actually the break off of what is left, the break part.
And after that they machined it, because a stone doesn't break like this.
Because they use building blocks or so somewhere else.
Yeah, it's not known.
I'm not sure.
I'm not. Yeah, I've looked into it and actually see if there are stone structures with these kinds of stones nearby. The only thing I could find that was nearby was the Castle of Dracula. So that's the only thing that was made of stone near this location. So that maybe that's interesting. You can see also machine marks. This is also a very big stone in that location. You can see this is very straight. There's a lot of weathering on this stone, but you can see some other stones that also, it was one time, you can still see it's very smooth. And also this has a scoop, like you have an ice cream scoop or something. It's always a little bit rounded, like the stone behind it. It's also a little bit rounded. And you can clearly see the first stages of the trying to make a cut in the stone. So they made a smooth line in it with some holes in it. So actually they could get wedges between it to break the stone apart. You can see a close-up of those holes. They are almost, somebody measured this and they are exactly the same distance from each other. So it was a very precise tool that made these holes, as precise as the tools we have nowadays. And they say that it was probably done in the medieval times, but I don't think they had that technology back then. You can see also a very precise laying out of those cuts, again in the stone. Here you have, for some sort of reason, you can see those knobs, like you see those knobs in Peru often. So this also looks a little bit like those stones in Peru and Bolivia that are on that angle. You can see now it's all over the place over here. They try to separate the stones. But there's now nowhere actually a building structure in this site. So it's all it's all a beginning of mining the stones, but nowhere near this site there's actually an old monolithic structure, as far as I know. Maybe it's still under some mountain, or because there are a lot of hills in this area that are never excavated and never researched. So there could be a huge structure underneath one of the hills in this site. Again, you see this very smooth machine marks on the stone. This is actually, you can see all those stones lying around here. Also a rectangular stone behind it, another one. So you can see another one. They're all over the place. You can see a strange cut. Maybe it didn't work out, because also you can see machine tooling above, very clear. Some saw marks. Here they are halfway. They changed the saw angle, and here again they changed the saw angle. You can see circles exactly above those changing in the angle of cutting the stones. So it's very precisely done, in my opinion. Here you can see also a stone that was broken off with those wedges kind of shaped between them. So it was very interesting that I found this site. Here again, you can see a massive block in a corner that is cut out. Like most of the ancient structures have stones going around the corner, so the structure they built is as strong as possible. So this is also looks like a stone they could have used in the building type of pyramids or sites in Peru and Bolivia. Well, you can see the actually size of a stone with some adults behind it, how big of a stone it is, and this is almost perfectly round. If you measured it, you will end up with almost a perfectly round shape. And also what is funny in the background, you can see a stone over here that is turned upside down. In the distance, you can also see a stone that is turned upside down. This is also very clear, turned upside down, and a lot of stones in this area you can see machine marks on the top, and they are basically turned upside down. So a strong force turned those stones upside down. You can see some rectangular stones behind it large column. And that is what I wanted to point out, that everywhere around the world there are stones with machine-typed high technology cuts on them and high technology shaped. So for me that is very interesting. I also found another site that Angel will probably love, and that's even more interesting. And just really quick, I have to find it. Yeah, I already got it. I've done my homework and arranged the pictures as good as possible in a row. Let's see if this works. Check. Yeah, it works. You can again see the arrow. My Google Earth isn't working, so I have to do this way. And you have here you have Australia. Everybody recognize. You have your Papua New Guinea, and where the arrow is pointing to this dot.
1 second, artist.
Yeah.
I just presented you.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Okay.
It's not working.
Thank you, Karen. Always.
Hang on. Slow here. Sorry, got to look at me. Series has done it.
Okay. Thanks. Well, you have. Well, I showed the location. I have to do it this way because my Google Earth.
Wait 1 second, artist.
Doesn't. Yeah.
It's a bit slow. Slow. It's stuck on me. No.
Does it work now?
It wouldn't come on me. There. Ah.
Is it right now or not?
Yeah, it's perfect now.
Okay. Well, you basically can see here's Australia. Here's the actual site, and that site is built on a coral reef. You can see these hexagonal shapes that are all around the world near coastlines, just to give you an impression for everybody that doesn't know that these kind of hexagonal shapes are formed often at the coastlines. And this is actually the site, Mandol, and it's if you have Australia like I showed on the map, that's where it's at. And it's called the island of Pompai, and you can see the red of the corals in the water. And they built this on this side. They built a structure. This is basically what they think the structure originally looked like when it was more above water. This is the ruins of the structure. You can again see, like I showed before, in those coastlines, you can see these hexagonal shapes. 5 points. Here it's crumbled into crumbling. It's all crumbled down, the structure. Here the structure is still standing with all those hexagonal blocks put on top of each other to make this structure. And it's on a coral reef, and actually those stones, they had to extract almost 50 miles, about 50 miles from the nearest island over there. And the National Geographic did a subject about this and actually tried to move the stones to this site with the boats they probably had back then, and they couldn't do it. The boat sank, so because those stones are way too heavy to transport them on those smaller boats. So they had some kind of technology or crafts to actually ship those stones to this location. So they were very skilled in transporting these stones to this site. I can show you another picture. You can see the size of the structure here. They put in a window and of some sort, or an entrance, and it's a huge complex. Again, you can see here some things fallen down, but those blocks are, some of those blocks are about 50 tons, so they are very heavy. And that's my presentation that I want to point out to you today, and you can research those locations yourself.
Artist,
Yeah.
Artist, someone in the chat room, mine, just asked, can you ask the elevation of those sites compared to the water level of today?
The water level has risen. They researched everything that was under the water, and basically, if you measure it, the water level when it was built, the water level rise about 10 meters. So maybe you can calculate when the water level was 10 meters lower than it was today. And maybe you can calculate back to the actually date of the site. Maybe it's possible. But around 10 meters, the water level has risen on this structure. I hope that answers his question.
Thank you, Artist. Anyway, carry on. Yeah, it's just a question. Yeah, carry on then.
Well, this is basically the presentation of this site. If anybody else of you want to ask a question, it's always welcome.
Yeah, if I see any more questions, there's the chats there, because I'll let you know.
Yeah. Or somebody of this panel has a question, is also very welcome. Or
I just have a quick question. There's a site. It's either in Russia itself or in one of the Eastern Bloc nations that's wedged between two mountains, and it's actually kind of like two sites in one. They're a few hundred feet apart from each other, but they go down like 60 to 100 feet below the surface of the ground. I was just wondering, since you play with monolithic sites, if you come across that one or have any information on it. I actually don't have it at my fingertips, but I had looked into that. But I always I want to really focus on one before I try to attack them all.
Well, yeah, I can understand that. But what I basically do is present these structures so everybody else can research it further. Just planting seeds for everybody to research further about these megalithic sites, and because they are very interesting and often related to each other in construction and skill.
Or showing the knowledge of the time. The one I'm talking about, it really looks like the way they have it, that they were, I think they were using the two columns. I always go back to electrolysis, but and somehow using the energies again from the two separate mountaintops. And it would be quite amazing if these two mountains actually fall between a ley line, or may not actually be mountains myself. At the time that I had looked into this was like five years ago, half a decade. And it was before I knew that China was burying mountains and that the Bosnian pyramid is actually a pyramid under a mountain. There's a structure underneath the rock
Yeah.
So it is quite possible that these are also structures underneath rock. I mean, the people of the time had no problem building rock mountains, obviously.
Yeah.
Angel, can you share a GPS location for it?
I will have to research again where it was. I remember it was in what used to be the USSR, which kind of means it's a big chunk of area. But I don't remember if it was in Russia itself or one of the bloc nations, but it was in one of them, kind of in the mountain area.
Mm.
But I will look it up again, and I can try doing a little research while we're on this chat, see if I can't bump into it.
That would be great. Yeah,
Thanks,
if not,
Angel.
Yeah, we're doing live research, so anybody who has to add something to it is always welcome.
Yeah, it was well done, RT. So it was a great presentation. You had mentioned that area, there was no castles anywhere near those stones.
No.
For quite a long ways, eh?
Well, the only castle that is near that I found that used a bit of those stones, probably have used a bit of those stones, is the Dracula castle.
Yeah, and there's no natural formations of those stones anywhere else, so it kind of looks like they're dropped in there, right, from somewhere else.
Yeah, or they were pushed in that direction because the Ice Age belt. They tell you, I don't know for sure. The Ice Age belt is probably in that line where the ice was when the last Ice Age was. The blocks of ice. They also tell that it was possible that the ice formation pushed those stones to that area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or something else. It's also a possibility. What they tell you that it was an ancient mining structure, well, that doesn't fit it all at all. In my opinion.
It doesn't quite seem to fit, no.
No. Well, that always tell you all kinds of story to hide the real truth. What was very funny with that site is that, again, there were giants mentioned in the ancient story about that site.
Yeah.
And that's often the case with those ancient sites. If you ask the inhabitants of those places and ask about the old stories of that location, often of the time there are giants mentioned.
Yeah, indeed, I think there's definitely races of the past that were a lot larger than we are now. Absolutely. But, within reason, of course, but
yeah, sometimes they go
everything else is bigger, so why not us also being bigger in the past, right? There was giant fauna, relatively giant trees, within reason. 1,000-foot trees weren't uncommon because we still have some 800-foot trees today. Mm-hmm. 400 to 600, I think, is the biggest one that's standing in Canada, but it's a huge tree.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, 1,000-foot tree would have been not uncommon. So.
Indeed, and also those mammoths they are found. They are also a lot bigger than the elephants that we have nowadays.
Yeah. I just draw the line at those basalt columns being trees, right? I don't go for that, but certainly within limits, there were a lot larger civilizations. And they were building out of big stone, obviously.
Yeah. Also, sometimes the passageways to most of the older structures, you can most of the humans can walk straight up in those structures because the passageways are big enough to fit sometimes a person around above 2 meters. That's about 6'11".
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking too, as you were going through that, I was thinking too that for example, if those were offcuts, so if those were offcuts from a previous operation, and so they had a debris field or a debris pile that they had piled, and so they were mining stone somewhere else and probably building on a solid foundation, like an actual mountain somewhere, north or Norwegian or somewhere handy on that flow, right? And they were discarding the offcuts into an ice field, right? And then the ice field actually grew and moved and then melted and dropped them in Germany, right? So they could have flowed in as a debris field that came in with the moving ice sheet and then melted and were just dropped on top, right? I could see that quite easily happening.
Oh yeah, quite easily.
Yeah.
Can I just say that Anthony's joined us? Hello, Anthony.
Hey, Anthony.
Okay, just doing a mic check. Okay, just doing a mic check. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've not used this computer for ages, and I can't remember whether it's a good setup or a bad setup. It's been that long since I used it. But I'm actually using the same microphone that Angel's using, or Angel should be using. So if I sound slightly different, that's the reason why. But it should sound comparable. Does it sound okay?
Yeah, okay. I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool. Just a little side topic for a minute. There's 979 people watching Globebusters, 109 watching Bro Sanchez. Rowan is in here right now, but it's quite a busy night, Sunday nights now. There's quite a few big hangouts happening.
Oh yeah. I'm just
using a PC.
Showing us pictures.
I'm just using a PC that I was going to say, I don't know if there's any American listeners listening right now, but I remember I've got photos of the 2015 eclipse that we had. It was a total solar eclipse, and the eclipse that we had, obviously being total solar, we got complete coverage. At some point later on, if you shout me when there's a gap, I want to show the pictures that I took. Because I remember in 2015, I wasn't a flat earther. I hadn't found it at that point. But I remember thinking, that was weird. I didn't see the moon approaching, and I didn't see the moon leaving. I just saw the blackness of the moon passing the front of the sun, and they told me it was the moon, but it didn't look like it were the moon. And at some point later on, I want to show the pictures for it. So if there's any Americans watching, you can kind of see what we see, or certainly what I saw. But before I show them, I just want people to realize that I didn't have a decent camera back then. My partner wouldn't let me use her camera, so I used my mobile phone, and I used one of her 15 quid filters that would allow me to see the sun, because otherwise my phone wasn't focusing on the sun. But it was really interesting to see the imagery that I got. And it kind of shows that you don't need expensive cameras and you don't need expensive lenses. A mobile phone will work with a filter, and you'll get really good photos. So when there's a suitable gap, give me a shout and I'll present it, and you can see what.
Okay, Anthony. I said maybe we do the pyramid talk, because it's a pyramid talk, and do that later on a bit later on.
Yeah, no, that's why I said give me a shout when you're ready.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, I found a link that to the if anyone can see what I have on the screen, if they can even try to type that into YouTube.
Or maybe Siri can type it in.
Link to the video in the chat.
And if they want the short link, which would probably be easier.
Yeah, the code.
It's right there. Got it to work?
Yep. Wow.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm just working on my elevator music. Okay, thanks for that.
This structure, when you somebody pulls up and looks at that video, you can use screenshots. It's an amazing structure. Amazing.
Okay.
Show me the code again.
It
I don't know.
is E as an elephant, whiskey, 1, lowercase u as an umbrella, uppercase L as in Lima, uppercase X as in X-ray, 3, uppercase C as in Charlie. I believe it's an uppercase I, or it's a lowercase L, and then a Y, uppercase Y.
I got the 3 wrong. Ah, still not. Huh? Can you just copy the link and pass it in the chat?
I probably, although it's on a different computer. Let me, hang on. I'll get to that.
Okay. You probably have to get your guitar ready, Chris.
That last one is it's a 1 before the Y. I put it into Notepad. So it's
We just got your icon, Angel.
Right. Well, I didn't.
Oh, okay, you weren't sharing anything. Okay.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything.
You weren't showing anything.
Oh no, I'm just saying it's a 1. It's where's my video?
EWW1 ULX2 for 3 C1Y.
Yeah, it's a 1 at the end before the C.
Oh, X1.
Yeah. C1Y is the last bits.
Oh, X3 C1Y. Still nothing. Something.
Yeah, if you could put it into the chat. It's on a different computer, so I can't really cut and paste.
Oh.
Let's go wait for it to.
Oh wait.
Come on, focus.
Yeah.
Let's focus.
It's autofocus, and it does it when it wants to.
A little bit back.
There it goes.
UL1 UX3C.
You are.
Oh, a little L. It's not a 1, it's a little L.
Is it a little L? It could be. Oh yeah, because the other one's a 1. Okay.
And that's, yeah, okay. Yeah, finally.
Yeah, that's what happens when they mix L's and 1s and stuff. They shouldn't do that. Zeros and O's.
So what?
Yeah, that's why I say copy all.
What? Siri's going to play something then?
Series, in the group chat, there is the link for the video. I've found it.
We'll come back to you in a moment, Chris.
I don't know if my audio is actually catching up.
Presenting you.
Okay.
Just see series.
Can you see you saw the link in the chat, in the group chat, Series?
We are honored to present a very recent discovery of an underground megalithic structure in a region called Caucasus, or also called Caucasia. That's a region in Russia. And these are fairly recent excavations done during the last few years or so, carried out by the research group of Vadim Chernobrov. And this archaeological site is so new that not long ago it did not even have a proper name. Well, we have some good news. We now know the location and name of the site. It is found in the Caucasus Mountains near Kabardino-Balkaria. And so it's appropriately named the Kabardino-Balkaria Shaft. Very little is known about its origins. There is still no attempt to even date the location at this point. The only things that the local legends tell us is about the hill or mountain peak that it is located in. And the legends say that this particular peak was actually man-made. All the peaks around there are natural. However, this one is said to be made by giants. And that happened in such a remote period of time that this nation, who has this legend, says that it was so long ago that even we don't remember it, though we've lived here for thousands of years.
Well, I guess man-made by giants doesn't sound very well. Probably it should be giant-made by giants. The entry to this whatever giant-made cave or underground structure is quite unimpressive. It just looks like some sort of dangerous hole in the ground. If one starts going down or making its way down this hole, in the beginning there is about 7 meters of kind of tunnel, which is about 70 centimeters wide. So at this point it is still relatively easy to get in. To go downwards, one reaches kind of a flat surface and it feels like that's the end, there is nothing more. However, further excavations showed that this is just part of a staircase. As one continues to crawl vertically in the narrow tunnel downwards, the walls become even smoother, better preserved, not so eroded and stuck with all kinds of material that has been falling in the cave during the long period of time that it hasn't been used. And the stones on the side are quite well leveled. They're very, very smooth. Sometimes the way they fit with each other is perfect. You cannot insert anything in between the stones. Sometimes there is a bit of space in between them. There are different variations of how the stones fit each other. And this smooth tunnel, more or less even and more uniform than the top, continues for a couple of dozens of meters. So it goes quite deep. And actually the atmosphere inside at this point very much resembles the tunnels in the Great Pyramid. The stone blocks on the sides are quite similar, the quality of work is quite similar, the size is quite similar. So that's the feeling one gets when one is in those tunnels.
The quality of the masonry work in the structure is quite high. The stones are very, very smooth. They have managed to stay in place for probably a very long time. And unlike, for example, the Egyptian pyramids, which are now located in an area of the earth with high seismic activity, this location is on an area with high seismic activity. Strong earthquakes are much more common than Egypt, and still the structure has withstood the onslaughts of time. So it's quite well made, actually. Although the archaeological site, as you can see on the photos, is in great condition in general, still it's obvious that there were times in the past when stones had fallen inside from the surface. In other cases, pieces of the structure itself broke off and fell inside. during earthquakes probably, and fell down blocking this tunnel inside. It was quite a dangerous excavation. In one case, a person almost got killed by falling stones coming down from the sides of the tunnel as they were going deeper. And the main work during this excavation was to actually clear this tunnel out. Even some heavy machinery was needed to break down the stones and clear a pathway just to allow them to continue through the tunnel. It becomes pretty obvious the structure has not been designed for people to move comfortably up and down the shaft. A slightly large or heavy-set person would not be able to access all parts of the structure. They would eventually find themselves stuck somewhere. Only thin men and women are able to crawl completely all the way down, at least through the parts of the tunnel cleared away so far.
As I already mentioned, some of the blocks perfectly fit where they meet. You cannot even insert a needle in between them, which is a typical mode of building for all megalithic structures all over the world. So that is the case with many stones, while in other cases there is some distance between the stones. And at this point it's impossible to say, is the distance intentional? Was this way when the structure was originally constructed? Or this happened later on with time and earthquakes shaking the structure? We cannot say at this point. This is one of the open questions. Most of the stones don't have any building material or binding material between them. They just perfectly fit with each other. However, at some locations in this structure, we see also other version of building, and there is some sort of building material in between the stones. So really, in this archaeological location, we see a great variety of the distance between stones. Here on this sketch, you can see at some point of excavation, probably this sketch was made some 2-3 years ago, and that marks the progress of how much of the structure has been excavated at that point. The two drawings show the giant-made cave from two different angles, front and side view. At this point, the expedition of Vadim Chernobrov has been able to penetrate some 100 meters below the surface. As you can see, in the beginning there is a kind of narrow tunnel, and after that kind of hole opens, although it's a bit too flat to be a proper hole the way we imagine it. But the full thing is not at all small. As I said, 100 meters below the surface. That is quite a big structure constructed by huge megalithic stones with the very flat surfaces.
And this structure is about some 40 to 45 meters wide. Even at this very early point of excavation, this structure is already the largest so far found in Russia. And the general feeling that one gets from this archaeological site is that this is only the tip of the iceberg. It looks like some sort of technological construction. There are still more tunnels which are currently full of stones. They are not yet cleared, not yet opened. And the members of the excavation themselves have the feeling that they have not yet reached the chambers from where the humans or giants or whoever operated all this technical equipment or structure for whatever purpose it may have served. So definitely there are more tunnels to be opened, to be cleaned up for further research and study. It's a real ongoing project, and this is only the beginning. And by the way, what you saw in the sketch earlier that was referred to as a kind of hole, when put into a three-dimensional perspective, actually it looks quite more complex than that. Instead of just some hole in the ground, it is a chamber somewhat shot of a flag blowing in the wind, That's more or less the look of it. A column-like structure then is located within the flag-like chamber, as it stands about 30 meters high. The mysterious thing about this column is that, well, it's still standing for one thing. The way it holds itself up is quite remarkable. It does so by leaning against one of the interior walls with just the very tip of one of its corners. So it is quite a mystery how such a huge 30-meter high column could still be standing after all this time and supporting itself over one single point, touching one of the walls. The alchemists who were researching the archaeological site were not extremely keen on trying to touch it or move it. It looks almost kind of flimsy.
Now, on this photograph, you can see members of the expedition, but not underground. This is all taking place on the top of the hill or peak that contains this structure in itself. And actually, at the later stage of the excavations, the researchers noticed that what they were counting to be natural rock around was actually also man-made. The stones were same as those used in the underground structure, huge blocks, 3-4 meters wide and high, same materials, same quality of work. And now this starts to touch another very interesting question about this archaeological site, is how did they manage to actually build it?
The most similar thing that we know of in terms of ancient construction would be the Egyptian pyramids. The quality of work and the size of these stones is the same. Although in Egypt it is still extremely questionable how they were able to drag all these stones from so far away and place them on top of one another. People have at least come up with many kinds of explanations. Slaves, animal power. Some people include UFOs and helicopters and other fantastic means of moving the stones. But for Egypt it is much easier because there is still some sort of support. You have the earth beneath, you have the ground, the surface, and you only have to worry about how to drag them. While here in Kabardino, we have same size of just enormously huge stone blocks, but instead making an underground structure with such an odd bottle flag shape, having a large chamber beneath and just a little narrow opening at the top. It really goes beyond comprehension. How did they do this? One cannot even begin to make a serious explanation. So the question of how these stones were moved is much more complex here than in the case of Egypt. And the feeling that Vadim Chernobrov is having at this point is that at the time that they built it, it was not an underground structure. It was an on-ground structure. And the current so-called hill or mountain peak around it is actually part of the structure, just as the local legends say. So basically, we come to the same conclusion found in other New Earth videos, that the legends are actually extremely valuable and very trustworthy sources for historical information.
Something else interesting that you can find on this giant-made hill are a couple of stone mushrooms which haven't been yet studied in detail. Although the full structure is made of stone currently, originally there was a long metal rod which was stretching between the two walls of the tunnel at some point. This is an attempt to make some sort of parallel between the internal tunnels of the Great Pyramid and those in underground chambers found in Caucasus, Russia. The common thing between them is that in both cases, these are tunnels that are not really meant to be used by humans regularly in terms of the humans doing much inside. They don't seem to be comfortable for passing through them, for example, let alone doing things inside.
And by the way, on this photo, you see the Great Egyptian Pyramid and the Caucasus Capardino structure side by side, and they appear to be more or less the same size in height. But they're not made to look the same for the purpose of getting a cleaner looking sketch. In reality, they are almost the same size. Another feature they have in common is that they both have tunnels that are too narrow to accommodate a human being inside. In the same way that robots were sent out to take images of very thin tunnels inside the Egyptian pyramid, there are similarly sized small tunnels leading away from this larger structure, and those need to be studied further. For now, when they put their LED lights inside, they cannot even see to the end of these tunnels. And the only thing they can do at the moment is take photos from just the starting point of these tunnels. So really there is much more to be studied at this archaeological site.
Although nowadays there are steps built inside the bigger tunnels of the Great Pyramid, they were not part of the original construction. They are modern additions for the tourists and scientists to get inside. There were no steps or other elements that would facilitate the penetration of humans within that structure of the Great Pyramid. And with situation in the Caucasus underground chambers.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this presentation. This was actually only a general overview of the most important points about this very interesting archaeological site. You can find the original lecture, 2 lectures actually, in Russian. The links to them is provided in the video description. What you saw presented here is not a translation by any means. It contains probably 20 to 30% of all the information, though it contains the most interesting one. And if you're really interested to know more, one source you could contact is the Cosmopoisk organization, which is led by Vadim Chernobrov. They also have many other interesting expeditions, and they have branches not only in Russia, they have branches abroad as well. So those who are interested in deeper study of this actually very important archaeological site should be contacting Vadim Chernobrov directly. Well, have a nice day, and we hope you have learned something today.
Oh,
Ooh,
one.
Oh, great, man. Thanks for
wow.
giving the information, Angel. That was very interesting.
Not a problem. That one is one that also intrigues me. That one, the Bosnian Pyramid, and well, a couple of other ones. They all intrigue me, but that one is another one that I'd really like to get a better CAD on and try playing with natural elements within it. The way it's set up with the same way that large chamber has the ceiling, so if there was condensation or moisture within that room, it would be dripping and falling. I mean, it kind of, there are many similarities between the two structures.
Yeah, indeed. Very clear. Yeah, it always amazes me how little we know about all those structures around the world, because often they are hidden or just overgrown by the time.
And because it doesn't fit our taught history, it's they like to keep it out of sight, out of mind, because anything that breaks people's belief of the whole evolution and like we're the smartest things there are on the planet, all these are evidence that there was somebody or something of an equal or greater intelligence. I say greater because what I assume the pyramid was doing would show that they had knowledge that we did not have up until just 100 years ago. So they were more knowledgeable than we were 100 years ago.
Yeah, indeed. Some of the things that we see in ancient structures we still can't explain, because sometimes we don't even know where they were used for. Yeah. But is Chris presenting something?
Yeah, what are we looking at?
Oh, I just brought up some quick cross sections of various hydrogen steam reformers and how they work. That's my first instinct. I'm following with what Angel's saying as far as if we logically think that many of these structures were built during during an ice age type of period, heat would have been the first priority, for life. So I definitely agree that many of these were used to, probably in various ways, but hydrogen steam reformation and water condensers. You would need a dual chamber, a hot chamber for your steam and a cold chamber for your condensation to regather your water. And then the openings at the top, what could be either open to atmosphere on one side and take off the heat on the other, right? So to control your pressure, and they would have been able to control pressures by adding stones or taking away stones to increase pressures in the chamber and whatnot, or pipe it into their homes or wherever for cooking, that type of thing. That's the first instinct I have is when I look at that. The way it was set up was a double chamber hydrogen type of reformer and steam type of process, whether they're tapping into natural geothermal. That could have been there. I don't know enough about the site, whether there is a water or hot geothermal underneath that structure, but that's my.
I'd like to know more about the outside. It could have been set to catch rain runoff and stuff as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be too. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely something to do with water and the basics.
Can I say something that's I don't want to sound stupid because I can't remember what she said exactly, but this lady, this job that I got the other day, they were in a new complex, it's got say 50 flats in it. And she said that they were drawing the electricity out of the ground. There's heat down there, and in that heat's electricity which they draw. So this building isn't set up on the main thing. It's got its own electricity.
One thing that she just spawned is natural underneath ground. If you go down about 6+ feet, it will always stay around 68 degrees. So in a time of cold in a mountain, if you kept your water in there, your water would keep from freezing because it would maintain ground temperature, which is in the 68-degree range, which probably has something to do with the fact that our Earth is vibrating and won't really let things freeze on the inside of it because it's constantly vibrating, appending energy to it. So anytime it would get colder than that, the vibrational would warm it up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely something to do with heat and water, right? That's definitely the first thing that goes through my mind. Yeah, you'd have to kind of know what's underneath it, and if there was definitely some sort of a geothermal or a natural flow that was there in the past, and they were trying to keep it from freezing, like you said. Yeah, that makes sense. That's the first thing I would jump to, especially during an ice age type of culture that was trying to survive the ice age. And that kind of lends me to think, how did the stones and so forth get there? Well, if you had a nearby reasonably nearby mountain that had some, some natural stones that were relatively, straight faced, that you could stack and make something to hold your water in, but you needed to bring it to where you were to slide them on ice would have been a lot easier than, right, if the ice was already there and you had like an ice road and you went the road like skates on a ice rink. You could relatively easily drag them to where you need them and then build whatever you needed. Yeah. Nature forces us to do things, right? So I always try to think, what would be the most natural push, right? What would push a society to do something like that, right? As a matter of survival, what would they have to do?
You don't think that any of these have got caught up in the flood, and so they're underground now, but they weren't underground? Or partly underground, but now they're underground?
Well, this particular one is like up in a mountain.
Yeah, I was going to say not this particular one, but in some cases, sure, they removed, like the one we were looking at before that RTs was showing. It looks like it was transported and dumped in after a melt, right? So it was probably carried with an ice sheet. And in other cases, like we see in the desert regions and stuff where all the destruction happened, they were just shoved in there instantly, and or with the flood, or moved around, and naturally. It's a little bit of all the above in that situation.
Yeah, indeed.
I got a link too. I'm going to share with Angel, because I've been researching this since our last pyramid talk. I'm going to copy this here too, and I'll share it in the chat so you can have the link.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So this is excuse me, kind of hoarse today.
Ooh.
So this one's environmentally friendly power generator based on moving liquid dielectric in a double layer effect. So it's just a white paper on electricity using salt water that these guys are just now figuring out how to do. But if you take the time and read through it, it's got the schematics of basically how a pyramid could be set up to do exactly that, using the water we had talked about prior. And this electrostatics, so I thought maybe Angel could get some valuable information about this, maybe some calculations to see how much power it would actually generate, and or hydrogen it could split, or whatever mode we're looking at as far as the Van de Graaff machine and that type of idea. But it shows how the circuits connect materials. Through double chambers and an air gap, and basically you could do it, I think, when I looked at it. But not sure what's in here for diagrams. But
thank you. This will give me some reading.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, I thought when I read through it, I was like, okay, this is exactly what Angel's looking for. It's actually got like looks like a sideways pyramid in there too, right? But that's just your flow for that's the electric flow for unidirectional. Basically, but when I see that though, it's like, okay, well that gives you an idea of the direction of flow within the pyramid too. I mean, in this case, it's a transistor and an air gap and just a resistor and a load, and it's to ground on one side and to your dielectric on the other. But the actual schematic could be actually in stone, right? And if the chambers are there in the right numbers, you can say, okay, well, yeah, so this is possible to apply that to a pyramid type of structure, and the entire thing be a huge power generator naturally. and it talks about some of the condensation analog versus digital. So I thought that'd be handy for you. So there's the link. Let me know what you figure out.
Thank you for that, Chris.
Yep. I'll stop sharing there. Carry on.
Well, Angel, more about that video for a bit. That's a very strange place. Weirder.
The one in Russia?
doesn't it? Yeah, where we live just gets weirder.
Yeah, it is, and actually now I haven't actually looked at that, I'd say, in 3-4 years. It was being that I am addressing the Giza pyramid, I get people from every walks of life trying to make me look at everything and tell them what everything is just because they think I see or believe I understand one of them, that I understand all of them. And I don't, but I can see in there where things are at certain elevations, and I do believe it has something to do with water. And I also, more that I look at it, hope that within there is information encoded the same way that I believe within the Giza pyramid there's information in some of the other monolithic structures. But again, it will take hopefully somebody going in there without damaging it, taking proper measurements, and hopefully somebody will put it into a CAD and we can print it out in a 3D printer and experiment with it. Also paying attention to the different rocks and what types they are. You know, just like everyone has done in the Giza pyramid, like these are limestone and these are quartz and these are marble and, you know, blah, 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 because certain ones have different properties. And, you know, it all goes back to recreating the containment vessel and seeing what it would do in natural life.
Did you mention one time, Angel, you might have access to a little piece of land or somewhere where you could actually set up a building out of concrete, like a small one, 12-foot square or something like that?
You can go to here. Yeah, here.giza.com. Sorry, here.giza.ws. And that'll take you to a Google map. And if you you know, convert that over, you can see it is a it actually brings you to a map, and then you have to hit the satellite view to actually look at it because it's in the middle of nowhere. And it used to be a ice house, so it already has a foundation that I have the ability to crack up, dig through whatever I want with, put eye bolts in the side to hold stuff. It's about I'd say 50 inches tall from the ground to surface level. So it's already down set into the ground. And I have a big chunk of land around the outside of it to construct stuff as well. And if somebody hasn't done it already, they can go to here.giza.ws and show it on Google Maps, whoever has the fastest machine.
You can show it if you want, or Series will, if you put it in the chat room on the Hangout.
You know, my screen, well, I'm not exactly sure. Since I'm on a tablet, I don't actually see this Hangout that everyone talks about.
Oh, I'm sorry, Angel. I'll send you don't I send you a link to the Hangout? So you could see it afterwards.
Is it a separate link? Well, I may be able to, but because I'm on.
No, what I mean
it may be that I have access to it. I just don't know how to view it. Here it is.
I
I do have access to it. It's on the side.
On
I had
your
to turn it
laptop.
on. See, I'm not really good with this Hangout.
On the laptop, you can.
I got it. I got the link.
And but without for the Hangout chat, without actually opening the Hangout, so you can actually put a message in the chat. Not the in Hangout chat, but the out Hangout chat. There are two parts.
That works.
We'll have to show him maybe when we're not on air.
I just put one in.
I got it all. I got it all. Pull it up for you there, and I'll share this.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Live research on the Sun and Moon group.
You got to have those little moments.
Yeah.
And then it takes a couple, but even if Chris pressed the button, it takes a couple of seconds to start doing it, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get it to do the satellite.
Anybody else in the chat room has had a lagging problem for the last, I don't know, 5 days or something? The computer's really
well.
slow.
There was a recent discharge of plasma from basically the sun. Right, we've had a coronal mass ejection type of event, so everything's kind of all messed up. Last couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me share this here. Where is it? Well, it should be there. Right there. Do. See, I can't click this stuff and play guitar at the same time. All right, there you go. It should.
Can't you? You can't do everything. I'm so disappointed, Chris. You can't do everything.
I can't do it all at once.
There it is.
Yeah, how disappointing.
I can see something. Washington Street.
There you go, Angel. You should be able to
That's
talk
it.
through it. Yeah.
You can see the little to the center of the screen towards the bottom. There's a square, a rectangle that's doing nothing. That's kind of where it is. Yeah, a little bit below your pointer there, like a tiny bit. The other side of that tree. Yeah, that's the one. That's my my playground.
Oh.
So I just need money and time, but I do have a place to put it that somebody said, here, build it here.
Oh, that's cool. Work in progress.
So I was, I actually did on one of my YouTube channels a little kind of walkthrough of it. And my idea was, because I'd like to make the pyramid as true to form as possible, on the right side, or how we're looking to the left side, I would put the Great Giza Pyramid so that it's facing north to south, and then to the south of that particular dugout, I'd put the Middle Pyramid, and then to the right side of it, I'd put the smaller pyramid. And I'd like to put them all so that I can run little clear hose between them so you can see the elevations of the different pools or moats around the outside to show that they're all at a very close to, if not identical, height. And that really, comes down to watching how they actually operate and seeing what levels they maintain. And, it'd be nice if I can actually get some small reactions, but I was just going to build the internal guts, not the actual external shell. So I'm not going to really have, as I discussed, like a big Van de Graaff generator at my disposal. But on the other side of the coin, I was thinking of actually bringing, I have this really cool tool that I'm going to go get real quick. Back in the days of, what do you call it, telegraphs, if anybody wants to look at my screen real quick, they had this toy that they would hook to the back of the telephone line or telegraph line, and they would crank this, and it actually generates electricity, which would make a bell somewhere on the other end of the line go ding, 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 so somebody could tie to it so they could talk. Well, actually, back of the telegraph line, it would kind of just send signal down. So they would do whatever, trace to make sure that the line was hot, good, and not broken or damaged. But since this is a generator, I was actually considering having it out there instead of actually using an air bubbler from a fish tank, to actually have people doing electrolysis in the middle of nowhere because there's no electricity. And that way I could see what would actually occur instead of just simulating it. I'm trying to get it as true to life as possible when all the dust settles.
Yeah, great, man. I'm very interesting in how that would, when it's finished, that is working. That would be awesome to see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no matter what, I can make it do something. My goal is to, to show that it will do function. And as more and more goes on, I'd like to actually see if I could get it to where it can control itself, where I won't need external stimulation by that little generator. Because if I could make it large enough where I could get the separation of the energy just strong enough to where it will, like I said, act upon itself. But I don't have the luxury of a huge river that's always supplying energy. So
well, that's like you see. I saw a video a couple of months ago with those magnets. That if you have it going round and round, the magnets will actually keep it going.
Okay. Well, I also wish to not just use electricity that to stimulate it, but I do believe that there is, and you can use magnets to separate hydrogen and oxygen. Or so it's said. I've had people try and tell me it doesn't work, but I don't think they were trying it in the right circumstances. Just like when people do cold fusion reactions, if you don't set the lab up properly, you're not going to get the right results, and then you'll say, see, it doesn't work. When people try to repeat Tesla stuff and they tweak it a little and say, I'm going to do it this way instead, and it doesn't work, they say, that Tesla was a moron. Instead of actually duplicating his lab setup identically, verifying reactions, and then tweaking and see what changes. But people in some cases, I believe, set out to disprove it from the get-go, and hence will taint the results anyway. But
that's kind of what I did with my antenna as well. The first principle was with a large rod and thicker wire, and eventually I ended up with actually the thinnest wire and generating its stuff is 0.001 a full million. Just by first getting it working and then realizing what you're actually doing and with all the changes, and then see what the best optimal way is. First get it working, and then learn how you can actually manipulate it.
Yeah, indeed.
So, a new video.
Just to comment on the last little bit there, Angel was saying about generating hydrogen with the magnet, if you wanted to play that. to it, really. That's the key, is the magnet has to be in motion, right? That's probably good. Then we can talk about it, seriously. You remember? Yeah, you can pause it there, series, if you want. Yeah, you guys remember we were looking at that turbine looking thing? Remember, it looked like a impeller pump turbine thing. I was just thinking there's a pit outside of the pyramid there, I think, that they don't talk about very much too. And if you had, in theory, that impeller turbine with a bit of flowing water, and that impeller turbine spinning a magnetic type of thing, then potentially that could be another thing you could look at for producing hydrogen in a saline type of solution. Yeah. If they added salt, a little bit of salt.
Well, there is talk of salt being caked on the walls and ceiling of the Queen's chamber. But
there's salt, you said?
Well, that is the rumor, that there was salt caked to the ceiling and walls of the Queen's chamber. So, but really nowhere else in the system have I heard anything about salt being found, or traces of it around. But so I think they were really overall working with fresh water, is my opinion.
Yeah, you would need.
But then,
you would need that. You would need two. You would need one side to be saline, the other side to be natural, right? To get the dielectric differential between the two fluids to generate power.
Well, if the steam in the whole environment, as it got into the Queen's chamber, was confronted with salt, and in the rest of the system isn't, if that would generate just in itself, it would be, like I said, it will be a nice experiment to try. I think there are things that well, at least I, and aren't taught in normal schools, don't know. Somebody somewhere that probably plays with live steam and stuff like that has found from error what not to do, because it'll cause explosions or sparks. And those things that they say not to do is probably what the pyramid was doing, because I believe their intention was to cause, in some cases, explosions and sparks.
One from Artis. Oh, no, he jumped out. Okay.
In Oklahoma, where oil has been king for over a century, inventor Troy Reed has been busy in his shop constructing rotating magnetic motors that he believes will soon revolutionize how we get around.
And it does work. This is a new prototype of the magnetic motor, and if I can explain a little bit about what you call a magnetic field. All magnets, the big old wooden prototype, has a system. As the motor went over, it had a tension to jerk over like that. If you take this motor here and you take your finger and rotate it, it doesn't have that jerking in it. So what I've done, I got rid of the crankshaft. I've got rid of the injectors, and the system in this motor here, as you crank this motor up, and like you do the other one, the motor will start running, and what I'll do, I'll energize it on this motor here. If you can see these amp gauges over here, this will come, when we get it up to about 150 volts, we'll unplug it and we'll turn the light on. If you turn this around where you can see this side here, all the working parts is behind this system here, operates from a little computer. Takes this 5 volts, it's 150 volts. What we're going to do, turn off all the switches, make sure there ain't nothing plugged into it. There's the plug. There's your 110 volts. Motor still running. You can operate this table plumb around. Still got energy running. Nothing tied up in the back of it. Nothing on the floor. Rotate around, still running electricity. So we're looking, hoping this time next year that you'll be able to use it in your home. So that's another. And what's good about this, you're talking about electric automobiles. This right here can sit in the back of an electric automobile and generate electricity and charge batteries up in a car.
There's a
New automobile, you drive it anywhere you want to. You don't pollute the air. All the other electric automobiles that I've actually seen has been nothing but this standard transmission. This is an automatic transmission car. There's not a whole lot of what you call junk, I would call, under cars. I've seen a lot of electric cars that had a lot of stuff in it. The only thing that this has a battery to run the radio, the blower. We've got 2 safety switches over here that can be mounted into an enclosed system, but we did this where you could see, where people can see this car with the technology. It's a safety switch system. This is a controller box, a Curtis control box. It cuts the amperage down. So with the amperage, here's what's real good about electric automobiles. All electric automobiles that have surge technology with this in it, they create heat. They've got to have a fan to blow this Curtis controller up because it gets hot. We don't want that to get hot. We want to stay that cold, because once it stays cold, you save on all the computer chips that's in this controller. So that means you can go farther, longer, and you'll have no problems. This electric automobile has got 2 gauges in front of the shifter on the automatic transmission. It's called the voltage and the amperage. That's what I was talking about earlier about amperage on automobiles. Let's see if we can't get the amperage to go down instead of going up. The voltage on this here should say somewhere around 120 volts. When we start out, there's no amperage at all. So the gauges is down below here, and we're getting ready to take and go drive the car, and you can see for yourself what it does. All you do is to take and put it in gear, and the motor sounds like a little sports car. Shifts, runs good, fantastic automobile, drives. If you'll see the amperage on the gauge, see it going down? Amperage goes way down. That's what I like about an electric car. If you floorboard the car, the most it will do would just be about maybe 100 amps. And that's what we want to do, is to keep the amperage down on an electric car. So it'll go anywhere really anybody wants to go. If you want to take a trip, you don't have to worry about it. You want to go plug in the house, because it's called the surge technology. It's a beautiful automobile, and I love it. And I've put a lot of hard work in this car, and we're going to make it. No oil, no gas to fool with. And the technology is here. It's going to be here. It's going to go. It's going to work beautiful for the whole world, for mankind. See you around. This is your future, people.
As we have seen so far, electromagnetism seems to be offering the most viable.
I think Elon Musk beat him to the dream, though. I think in the end.
Yeah. And this was bad. This video was from around 1989.
Yeah.
So, and it's still
there's an issue just to save, just in case anyone gets the idea that they want to go tinkering with those rotating magnet motors and so forth. That you'll see, I call it clickbait. So it's the free energy perpetual motion machine stuff you'll see videos of on YouTube and whatnot, using magnets in a circle. Right? What happens is when you start spinning magnets like that, it disrupts the magnetic moment within each magnet, and each magnet eventually becomes saturated, and it'll balance the field within the magnet. And when that happens, it loses basically the torque at the center of the magnet. And over time, it'll work for a little while, but over time, the magnet becomes just brittle and they fall apart. They just turn to dust because they can no longer stay together. So unless you're willing to replace very expensive magnets every so often, by the thousands or hundreds or whatever, then so it's interesting though. It's cool history, right? To see how they've progressed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but people still do it today, right? They got these videos with clickbait, buy my book on my spinning rotating magnet energy motor for free energy, and
this was basically on the news. I think it was a news clipping of a statement on the news, but often those inventions won't progress any further. But just to give you an example of how some things electric with magnets could work if you put your mind to it and maybe improve it. But
yeah, that's as far as they ever got. Yeah, with those.
But
that's the reason, right?
Yeah.
Magnets, that's why we use a coil in a motor, coil and magnet with an iron core, because the iron core can be saturated and desaturated, to infinity without basically becoming destroyed. But if you try to do that with the magnet up to another magnet, it's becomes self-destructive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what his exact design was, but I do remember seeing his video. But there's a gentleman within the past decade that instead of making an electromagnetic motor that is in the way we have it, where it goes in a circle, he made it so it kind of looks like a spaghetti noodle, one of the ones that are a curly noodle, so that the magnet is not pushing against itself. It takes that what do they call it? There's a kickback, like whenever there's a field, there's like and you were saying that moment where the energy field is pushing against itself when it's going from north to south, and he takes that and moves it out of the way. So instead of it being in a circle, it's in a line down the motor. You understand what I'm saying? I could draw it better than I can probably explain it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, the flux fields start clocking, right? They start to lock into their phase, and
yeah. So it, instead of having it so the next that field, you just move the other magnet out of the way, and you have it, instead of being in line in a circle, you move it about 2 inches away from it, so the fields don't compete with each other, but they're both spinning on the same shaft. Where currently when we do it, we kind of put all the magnets in a line around the shaft, as opposed to thinking, hey, the shaft can be 10 inches long, and you can just have the magnet sporadically all through it, kind of like the same way we do with the piston, the part that's in a normal car, where not all the pistons are firing at the same time, so that crankshaft kind of has a bunch of egg shapes all over it. You can kind of do the same thing, only those egg shapes are each magnets, so you're not fighting against each other. You're all working in symmetry as it's going through it. But it's just new ways of looking at it, getting more efficiency out of the device, finding out where nature is competing against itself and working with nature instead of fighting it.
Yep.
Figuring out how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But you had a video as well, so.
Another video.
Yeah, we can start with this.
Ah,
All right. My thought, actually, that's a perfect spot. That would simulate ground, and the grotto would be in that area.
Yeah.
Sorry, not the grotto.
Where we could build this up
Right.
some way if you needed it more elevated.
Put the subterranean chamber there, with the dead end shaft off to the side, conduit coming up to put the, probably right here would be like the grotto, simulating ground level, and the, because that also has, the same way that there's the bubble shape to get into the, what I was saying at the main entrance, the inlet, there's also one in the grotto that maintains a water level within the grotto, because there's a simulated water level in there as well, doing the exact same way using, but anyway, at a higher elevation to have the Queen's chamber level. So the Queen's chamber would wind up being like up here. So people could get to it by coming here and looking at it, and it would be up at this level with the grotto down here, subterranean chamber down here.
Okay.
The King's chamber up maybe 5 or 6 feet up in the air, possibly even out at a 45-degree angle, just so that people, you know, the way that the ground is here, could get to it. And then out here have the simulated moat. Maybe put dirt and stuff to simulate the moat outside.
Yeah.
On this side, because we're
wanted to have water then?
the moat would, the whole thing would kind of have water, because the whole idea is to show the water bubbles and pressures and stuff. Over here, possibly, to have the center pyramid and its whole internal construction. It doesn't go down as deep if you look at it. So it could kind of be simulated here, as long as the water level would still wind up being the same. And potentially, when I was thinking about it, I didn't remember the tree, to have over here the ground or third pyramid and its water level and its internal guts. So from down here within the structure, have like a cut where you can see the internal guts of each pyramid and the water levels and how I feel they are. And possibly, just because water keeps its elevation, to run like a moat around it and come in between it, so you can actually see that the 3 water levels are, but you know, maybe we'll have them like an inch or 2 above each other. And then that's echoed because a hose would come between each of those and be on either side of the Queen's chamber and be the same thing, where those water levels would be the same as the water levels in the moat, because water keeps its equal, and that would show the water level in the Queen's chamber, and then the waters on the outside and their water levels.
Use the water level, right? With the hoses, you know?
Yeah, the hoses with a little piece of clear thing, because that's kind of exactly what this whole thing is doing.
Let's use on trailers instead of, because it's so much cheaper and easier.
Bingo, yeah. And so that would basically be the system. Now, easily, I have a generator, a hand crank generator, that I was thinking we can use a hand crank generator instead of running electricity. So potentially kids can come out here and crank it, and bubbles would come on their own. Now that would show that, hey, you can get hydrogen and oxygen out of water. Black and white, you know, you should learn this stuff in school, although they don't teach you that. And by doing that, I'm not quite sure if we quite want to get into actually burning hydrogen and oxygen together, because we're looking at explosions and potential problems, because hydrogen does explode.
And the whole reason in the particular structure, it's in a huge, thick piece of rock, is because just like when your furnace turns on in your house, there's when then it comes to a rumble. Same thing is true in the chamber up top. It has to start with an explosion, and then because of how it controls itself with the water level choking itself off, it comes to a controlled burn. But it does start with an explosion. So I'm thinking, again, that maybe being 5 feet up where you could get to it, maybe a set of stairs or something so kids get up there. We could simulate the king's chamber, maybe have something they can come from the other side, but I'd like to have it up there, and then maybe a spritzer bottle or something to simulate steam. Because again, I don't really know if we want to have a fire. You know, we could have a simulation of that down at ground level where we have some hydrogen, oxygen, people can burn it together and see, hey, it makes a cool flame. And potentially, as we grow it, maybe really have hydrogen and oxygen in a real flame. But otherwise, a spritzer bottle would simulate steam, because we don't have the rest of the structure. We don't have a several 100-foot structure to actually get the static. So we'll have to simulate steam dripping down in the thing just to get a visualization of what's happening, because we can't truly make the whole system. Just the basis of it is what I'm looking at.
Grab it. Sitting right there.
Ah.
Where did I?
Yeah, I see him. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, because I think when people see the system, it's a lot easier to understand. And you know, I just noticed on your T-shirt you have the center pyramid, not the Great Giza pyramid.
Yeah, but to me, this is how you build all the pyramids. You know?
I agree. I'm not arguing that.
They took that picture and I approved it because that's a picture.
It is, but that's one of the things that when people sit there and they say, hey, they're missing the capstone, they show that picture because it does look like something could be missing, but that is not the same one that has the guts that we're talking. But
Angel.
Yes.
I noticed that you were talking about the grotto. Oh, hang on, let me turn my mic down.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting feedback myself, but you were talking about that being the grotto, right?
The grotto would be at ground level. Would be.
And then you were talking about the need for a generator to create the stimulus to give you the voltage that you would need initially to create bubbles.
Well, yes, because I believe that they worked. Like, if you have several thousand amps but only 2 volts, you could do a lot with it. Chris can probably tell you, because he's probably been in phone rooms where they have gel batteries, lead acid batteries, that they have that are the size of refrigerators, but they're only 2 volts, and you string 24 of those together to make 48 volts, and that's what runs that room when there's a power outage, and it'll run that room for like 8-10 hours, depending on the size of the phone system in there or whatever. But
yeah, sure. I mean,
we're not working with massive amounts of amperage. I don't have a river at my disposal, so yeah, I have to generate it.
I'm with you, but I mean, I bought batteries today for my, my what they call not the mobile phone, but the phone that's in the house that's mobile. They only take 2 AAA batteries that are like 1.2 volts each, 2.4 volts
use
in
a
total.
car battery too, and take it out of your car and use that. That's 12 volts. That'll work great. But I kind of wanted something that eventually I'd like this to be like a museum piece. I'd like it to be, you don't have, well, you may. Here on this coast, on this continent, we have, they have a Franklin Museum in Pennsylvania, where it's hands-on, where you actually touch and feel the experiments. You don't just look at them. Everything is a hands-on, like you take spotlights and you actually mix them on the back of the wall, and they tell you about how frequencies and stuff and how the cones in your eyes works and how the colors mix, and then you you play with sand, and you know, all the experiments are hands-on. I think a kid, if they are interactive, not just hooking a battery up, and the battery doesn't, I could use a battery, but then you have to charge it. And this is in the middle of kind of nowhere. And I wanted to make it so that it could be where, you know, it just stays there stagnant. It can be built into the structure, and a kid could walk up to it and do it, or an adult could walk up to it and do it. I don't want somebody to get the battery to be dead.
What I was going to ask was, the one thing that's missing from the grotto reconstruction that you were just talking about. Just correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the grotto essentially right in the middle of one of the ley lines where it's that state of magnetic discontinuity?
It may, and that may be part of the source of the energy. Is energy is just moving electrons from point A to point B. If you can manipulate those electrons to move from point A to point B, that's the essence of energy. We squish them with magnets, we capture them with photons, we do lots of things, but it all has to do with manipulating the electrons.
So inside the grotto, there was those 2 pink granite stones, right?
I'm less and less thinking that the stones are like doorknobs. A doorknob doesn't generate electricity, but I'll tell you, on a dry day, if you touch that doorknob, you're going to get a spark. The electricity is actually the only 2 places in the Giza pyramid where it touches ground, earth, which would be the pit in the subterranean chamber and the pit in the grotto. The whole pool of water within the grotto will have whatever voltage that stagnant water there at ground level is. And then the subterranean chamber will have a different voltage, because I believe they're either having the river run with aquifers underneath it, which it'll have a different voltage, or they're actually pulling from the pool outside the middle pyramid, which will have the positive voltage. And I've already kind of said how one of them is maintaining electrons. It quarantines it like a big Van de Graaff generator. And the other one is venting electrons because it needs to be the antithesis of it. And it's the play between those two, one extreme electrons and one extreme lack of electrons. That's your energy. And it may only be like, 1 volt or 2 volts, but it's a massive, the size of 2 huge structures worth of differential.
But there was another question though. The pink granite that was inside the grotto.
I believe that it is I believe it is a granite rock, but I don't think it was anything special of a granite rock like being pink granite. It could be, don't know, but I've never been in there, and they don't have color photos.
No.
And until we get a nice drone, either part Zeppelin or, we get nice big batteries, and we can actually fly something in there and get real pictures, I need to go with, whether it's pink granite or, special granite. They say it was a granite plug, and I know approximately where it was before we knocked it into the pit. So,
what I was going to say was the conversation we had last week when we were looking at that T-shaped subterranean kind of burial chamber, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
A citation for a bloke that says that within that chamber that we were looking at with the ramp, there was pink granite, and I believe it's the same pink granite.
I believe
that
to be true.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, is there a connection directly with the grotto in terms and the pyramids in general with the pink granite? I believe that the grotto did have pink granite in it, but I also believe it's the same pink granite that was mined from the same mine that had that in last week's chat when we were talking about that T-shaped thing that has got the same granite in it. And I'm wondering, could the 2 structures be connected? Because I think they were 4 miles away.
Yeah, they were fairly close.
Connection.
Even the one to the north of it is fairly close. It's at a higher altitude, and it would be funny to find out if its altitude would be like have some symmetry between the pyramid, like maybe its top edge is at the same height or something. That would be really quirky. The other one, I believe, is more at ground level, and that I'd have to appeal to Aries on, because he's the one that kind of or artist, sorry, because I've not really gone that heavy into it. Or on Google Maps or Google Earth, I think you just hover your pointer over it, it tells you the elevation.
Yeah, Google Earth also tells us that we live in a ball.
Yeah, well, it still tells you the elevation.
Google Earth know the truth.
Isn't there copper lugs in there too, or copper embeds into one of the stones behind one of those blockout stones?
Well, in the grotto, which is very, to my knowledge, has really only been explored 3 or 4 times in its entirety. I don't believe there was any metal found, from what I understand. The only thing special about the room, other than its configuration, is that they have the granite conduit comes down and stops at just below the elevation of where the granite rock was located, about 6 feet to the south of it. No, sorry, east of it. We actually went to the east of it. And I believe that kind of was your conduit, that pulling down to the, or at least the way to look at it, the energy was coming down and had to go through the water, traverse through the water to reach ground. Ground being the grotto, because that's, energy wants ground. And in that process, the 2 pools of water, which were maintained so that the rock was separating the pool of water that connects with the conduit that goes up to the subterranean chamber, up to the Queen's level and then down to the subterranean chamber, and the one Earth, which is the pool or the pit that's in the grotto. So the pit will be at the voltage of whatever Earth is at that point. And as the electrons are moving between it, they have to pass by that granite rock, which I kind of picture as a big doorknob. And it allows it to transfer the electrons because it's through granite, where the water kind of doesn't transfer. Only the electrons transfer. As it's giving up, yielding its electron, it's the water is doing something. It's not just going to sit. Maybe it's evaporating quickly. But if you were to
Just
run
going back
massive amounts of voltage through there, even at a small, massive amounts of amperage at a small voltage, you're going to get a reaction.
Going back temporarily to the pink granite argument, it appears that the pink granite has got that it seems to have a unique characteristic that normal granite might not have. And I was just wondering if anybody's come across pink granite in any other context other than the pyramids. And is there anything to suggest that there's something unique about it other than that it appears to be used in capacity rather than abundance? They use it like in niche areas. Chris, I was just wondering if Chris had any views on pink.
I'm sharing the screen there with you. You can see the pictures I brought up there.
Say again.
He's brought some pictures up.
Presenting to everyone.
You're lagging.
Breaking up a little bit, Anthony.
I've just realised that a 1.6 gigahertz processor isn't enough to do a Hangout. What?
I said you were lagging a little
Sorry,
bit.
what did you say?
You were lagging a little bit.
Yeah, this PC is not as good as it needs to be, really. Go on, Chris.
Obviously we'd have to confirm that this picture is from the pyramid, but it's appearing to be when I did the Google search for it. So just copper lugs in the Giza pyramid brought up some images when I was researching the pyramids, and I found that there's evidence of copper lugs embedded in certain areas within the granite sections, and it appears that the copper lugs are in some cases into pink granite. I mean, this is obviously pink granite right here, you can tell. But it's also interesting that there was some sort of a small chamber that they ran the robot up into and saw these lugs in behind, and they're eroding the green, the green that you would expect coming from copper that's eroding over time. So there was something connected in there. And then at some other point, maybe RTG, you can read that. Maybe can anyone read that? I don't know the language, but it looks like German, maybe.
You know, that picture that you show right there with that hook.
Yeah.
I have never actually seen that picture with that hook, but that would be relevant. That's about a third of the way up one of the shafts. I believe that would be the what they refer to as the south shaft, the one that goes towards the Grand Gallery. And if that's the case, that is a point of reaction at a lower elevation. And that elevation, if I was going to take a quick guess, would be an elevation that's maintained within the ground pyramid, or the third pyramid, because I believe that is where that shaft was intended to go to, or where that shaft shorts to, because the primary reaction goes through the wall of the south shaft, out of the Queen's chamber, because that's where the crack was, which is the evidence of the primary reaction going through that shaft, which is the one that has the where you look at the leads, the ones you were looking at, that's the one where the reaction was at the higher elevation. Hence the reason why those leads are nasty looking. And if you look at the leads that they found at the top, if you do a search for Gantenbrink's door, you'll see that the leads in the shaft that goes towards the grotto, sorry, the Grand Gallery, those leads are very pristine when they got up there to find them, in comparison to the leads you're looking at that are on your screen right now. And they those are actually at the tops of the shafts out of the Queen's chamber that they were sent up there by, they went up there 2 or 3 times using 2 different rovers, little long-shaped robots that pinched the wall to climb, because there are steps and stuff throughout the. Now that's not in the Giza pyramid. That is.
Chris, could you show that other picture in German so I can translate it really quick? Just for a sec. No, thank you.
Is it big enough for you to see? I can try to open it in a different link, maybe.
Can you read that then, Artis?
Yeah.
Well, put it in.
That's right there.
Das Mann von ich gedacht hatte, dass als sich ein Niedergang bei einer kleinen Metallschichten aus eine oefeningsmechanisme hadden voor de man met them. You probably don't know further. So I have to translate it for you.
Yeah, you need more of the sentence. It's half of the line, half of the sentence. The rest
Yeah,
is,
but I can basically try to translate it. Since it has mistakenly thought that it was inside
then
of
Google Translate and it will give you everything in English.
yeah.
That's what I was looking up for. But it's
Oh, somewhere in the thread. Okay.
yeah, that's what I mean. It's hard to find it in the thread here, but
Ja, that's it. Beide lijnen met 7-8 om einen.
Yeah, you see how there's a picture right above it that's the exact same picture without it? I think somebody just stuck that in there with some Photoshop. I don't
that's what I'm
think
wondering,
that's
right?
really, I don't
Yeah.
think that's really there because I've seen the robot footage, and I'd like to get the uncut robot footage because I like to see the boring parts as well. But I have never seen, they stopped and looked at anomalies, and I had never seen that. So I think that is just like the one where they show a skeleton standing up in one of the corridors. I think that's very Photoshopped.
That's what I'm wondering if this string was just saying, okay, well these two are there, and there's a chunk of pink granite down here, right?
Same one as the fake one, probably.
Yeah, so then maybe they were just trying to say that if you connected this down to here, then it would work in a certain fashion. But anyway, interesting.
Yeah, but when you look at on the right one, the right copper part is actually a copy of the other one.
Yeah.
You go back to the other photo, it's exactly the same one.
Yeah.
It's just put in there.
Yeah, like they've taken this here and put it down here. Yeah.
It's exactly the same one. Yeah.
Yeah. I know these two are real, but I think this is like Angel's saying, like these two are real, and this one's a Photoshop of this one down here. But I'm just wondering if that's what they were talking about in this thread because it's in German. And,
yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff to think about.
Yeah.
Basically describes the photo.
Yeah.
This is why you want your own data.
If that is copper though,
right.
Let's just go with the idea that it might be real. If it is real, then it would imply that there's something behind the copper that's connected to somewhere else, like a wire or some conductive material. Surely that wouldn't be designed into this structure.
Well, these ones are real because the robot found them. And that was confirmed scientifically. There's a site that a white paper on it and all this kind of stuff.
Someone's playing a live feed in the background.
Anthony. He's slowed down.
Yeah. But this one I think is Photoshop. But these two are real, and I think they're definitely copper. Although they didn't test them, but just judging from visual metallurgical inspection, it looks like they're copper, right? Just the green with the patina and the amount of erosion on them because they're at one time electrically charged, right? It just shrinks it at the core. So that's interesting. That's where I also kind of go with there's definitely an electrical element that we can consider.
I wonder where they actually go. Because you can't see actually where it all goes.
Well,
I think that's what Anthony was asking. Where does it all go?
this is where, Tesla and transmitting energy and stuff like that may come into being. Or it may go through a conduit that links between, you know, the whole understructure, because there are lots of conduits under the structures, which is another place that would be great to get little roaming robots down there, and again map that out, because there's a myriad of conduits and they don't all interconnect. So I believe they were actually different conduits, like traces on a big huge PC board.
Yeah, in a way, you like to actually break the whole thing up into all the pieces there are and figure out how it fits. Because of how it fits, you can actually put it back. But kind of figuring out what is there, there's so much hidden in it as well. You can only come so far with not damaging anything.
And it's an interesting study. You know, you look at these types of areas, and I just instantly think, well, that's a lifting lug insertion point for something. But then these ones here, this one here that goes clean through. Are you aware, Angel, at any time in the past when
it looks like
archaeologists took core samples intensely to test the rock, and then some of this looks like modern machining that's late 1940s, right?
Well, I'm not aware of any time that we did core sampling. However, Chris Dunn and many others have pointed out that there is great evidence of machining already on the structure. There's places where it is where corners are curved inward, where it's more than 90-degree angle. So that would you could really only do that by molding and or machining. So it goes for much more than just quarrying and people working with little chisels and banging on rocks. These were very well constructed by a society with technology equal to or greater than ours of 100 years ago.
For all I know, they actually created all those stones just like cement, but then with their knowledge. And we think it's just granite stone out of a mountain and carved, but they actually molded it. I mean,
well, the evidence for it being poured is, from what I understand, they did a couple of things. Just before they did the whole reconstruction thing, which they did in the late 90s type stuff, where they put air conditioning and air vents and lighting and stuff like that. They tried to do a bit because we were all new with the electron microscope, where they took a little fragment of it and tried to get the orientation of the magnetic filings within the rock, so they could tell which way the rock was facing at the time of its creation, so they can narrow down to which quarry it came from. And the results from that were sporadic, and they scratched their head, threw up their hands, and it was kind of like one of those, failures where they said, oh, we failed. Obviously we don't quite yet know how to do this machining yet. Just like every time they try to prove rotation of the earth, oh, we failed. We don't quite know how to do it yet. But then they went after the cleaning, and they were starting to do sound, and they did the whole vibrational test thing and looked at the frequencies, kind of like the same way we do a mass spectrum thing, where, we hit it with all the different tones to get all the different frequencies back, because we now have this new auto-tune thing. And Chris can probably tell you how we fly over and we bounce sound off the ground and we listen to what comes back, and you can tell based on how long the echo took, how far down in the ground it is, and based on what echo you get back in the vibrational frequencies, what it is that made the echo. Like, did you hit a drum, or did you hit a flute, or did you hit you can tell what it was you hit.
Oh, even that. Okay. Not only where, but also what.
Not only where, but what. And Chris can probably, I'm hoping, understands that better than I do. I understand it. It's like kind of radar does the same thing. You can tell if you hit, what it is, how solid the object is based on the sound you get back. But When they tried to do that with the rocks, they found water infused within the rocks, which you're not supposed to find within a rock that was made within the bowels of the earth, squeezed under thousands of pounds of pressure, and boiled under thousands of degrees because it was molten rock, and then allowed to cool over time and formed a real rock.
So that's an evidence for quartz rock.
Right. Recently, we did a bit with X-ray, and we found air bubbles in the rock. Again, a third thing you do not find in natural rock. End of statement. I don't believe many of the rocks within the structure are organic as we consider them rock. This has been a myth, and everyone's trying to float them down rivers and waste their time on how was it built, instead of focusing on, hey, let's actually measure this thing out and look at it.
Cool.
That's why I say, how do we know that the granite is not that particular type of rock?
Chris, I wrote the text of that those pictures you were showing before. It basically comes down to they thought there were handles to a door, and they attached an some opening gear with ropes on it, and tried to open it, and then the handles broke off. So they really fucked up. They tried to open it.
That's why you see.
They knew that behind those metal pins was a room, supposedly, and so they tried to open it, and that went wrong, and the metal pins broke off, the door handles, some sort, and yeah, that was basically the end of it.
Okay, if that's their speculation, I watched the video.
Okay.
They sent a robot up there, and the robot had on the surface of it a sonic speaker, and the speaker had to rest against the rock so it could tell how deep the rock was, whether it was a 30-inch rock or a 10-inch rock. And I think it wound up being at like a 5.5-inch rock. But based off of that, they had to build the robot with a long enough drill bit to get through the rock. And in order for that speaker that was, I think, like a little 8-inch dome to fit on the rock, they had to, with the permission of the Giza Antiquities, break that piece off. Nothing about trying to use it as a door. They got permission to break it off in order to get the speaker to sit on that rock, in order to tell how large the rock was by probably bouncing waves back and forth inside of it. And that is the as far as I know, the real and honest of how those things got broken.
Okay. Yeah, well, I would just read the text and translated it, so that's not my opinion. It's just basically the text. But your point of view makes a lot more sense.
So you're saying that there was a lug there on the other side of that tunnel as well, so there'd be 3 altogether?
No, there's on the door itself. Yeah. Here is actually, let me turn on my camera and change it to the other direction.
There's two on the other side. Like they did the ultrasonic testing, right? Those 2 are real, right?
Yeah, that is what it looked like. They drilled a hole. Well, that's after they drilled the hole. And I was looking to see if I can find the picture of the robot they sent up there, because when you look at the robot, you'll see that when they well, there's one of the robots. How do I get this thing to point at the one I want it to look like? I want it that one. Where's my finger? Oh, because the screen is backwards to me. I'm sorry. There's one of the robots they sent up. That was like the third set. The first one they sent up, it looked like a big long thing, and there was the third. Everything's backwards. This is killing me. There it is. I'm trying to go backwards on the screen. That was one of the robots they sent up there. You know, they've sent a bunch of robots up there. If I had time to prepare for it, I would have the.
So on the below, I guess it'd be the lower right corner of your screen there. I think it was when you're looking in that tunnel there with that little jutting out edge.
Yeah, and there's another picture of one of the robots. Man, there it is. You know, they sent a couple of things, but I'm trying to look for the one that had the speaker on the front of it. I'd probably have to watch through the documentary to find it, but they went up there with one of them with a speaker on the front of it to gauge how long the how deep that rock was, or how big it was to the other side, or if it was just solid and there was nothing on the other side. And when they got back signs that it was fairly hollow, they said, "Oh, good, let's drill a hole through it." And Giza Antiquities said, "Okay, sure, yeah," because honestly, they're hoping to find treasure because this was a tomb. I can't find it, but I'll find the documentary. I have copies of it somewhere that show the tools that they sent up there. Of course, like I said, they truncate it because it was, it takes a while for that thing to rove up there at like half a mile an hour, and so they only show a glimpse of the whole trip. But it's better than nothing.
Right, but the two lugs that were behind that main stone are there. But I'm trying to figure out if the one that's on the one.
It's a U-shape. It's a U-shape. It goes out, comes across, and goes back down. There's no lugs or anything. It was just one U-shaped piece of metal. Currently, that is all I know, and it may do something on the inside. For all we know, there's diodes and transistors in there, but as far as we know, it goes through about a 5-inch piece of rock, does a loop, and comes out the other side. So it doesn't. It goes in and out.
Right, but the one that was shown in the long corridor, that was single.
That was fictitious. That was a hypothetical. It even said, they said, what if we hypothetically put one here? That was somebody's vision of a hypothetical situation.
So that one's
it's not real at all.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. All right, thanks.
So is it acting as a conductor or as an antenna?
That would go more to experimentation. They may be transmitting like a Tesla transmitting electricity. I want to build it and see what happens. If we walk up to it and we're like standing there glowing or something like that, where you just feel like, you're standing next to a transmitting. Back in the CB days, have you ever been next to a truck when they're transmitting at 25 watts or something like that? You feel the energy going blah, 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 through you. You just feel it. That's why you're not supposed to be around like, television and radio transmitting towers when they transmit.
So little do we know. Yeah, the Earth is round.
Round, round, baby, like a record, round, round.
done a most amazing 2.5 hours on research. In the eclipse tomorrow, then who's going to try and watch it, be in it, film it?
Nah, I can't be asked.
Yeah, we can do it live.
I thought you were doing that road trip.
Yeah, I am. I'm just finishing ice cream. Give me a minute.
I think Anthony wanted to show a few pictures from that, and to let the know, Forces starts about, well, he's going live about 7:45 our time, and so we'll go on and share his live feed, show quite a lot of this eclipse. So that's what we're doing tomorrow, will be eclipse talk. And everybody's muted except me and Anthony.
I know.
No one's going to say anything.
I'm just finishing an ice cream, but shout outs to Good Times for All in chat. I'm not seen Zach for ages.
Are you going to show some pictures then?
Yeah, give me a minute. I'm just finishing an ice cream. 1 sec.
It's very interesting stuff tonight, guys. You know, artists showing us that stuff when we started, and then Angel showing that. It's like, whoa, we just don't know nothing.
Now I'm hungry for ice cream.
Yeah, there's
Also,
cookies. There's
also
cookies, beef burgers, and ice creams now.
Yeah, and also hungry for more information, of course.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me log out of this computer because I honestly don't think a 1.6 gigahertz processor will allow me to present photographs as well as do a hangout. It really is pushing the boat out. Okay. So give me like 5 minutes while I go upstairs and reconnect on my other machine, and I'll be able to do what I want without lagging.
Okay.
Maybe Chris has a 5-minute song on his guitar.
Yeah, Chris, play us a song.
Play a tune? Yeah.
You go on, Chris.
Yeah. Interlude music. All right, let's see what I can do here. Just a sec.
Interlude music for the sun.
Yeah, by the multi-talented Chris.
Yep. Interlude music for the sun and moon group, the sun and moon group.
You know what it means, though, Angel and artists? It just means that we need to come back and talk about it a bit more.
Yeah. No problem. I also have to research it a bit more because I'm always researching all the things I research and try to find more and more information about it and more pictures and. Yeah.
What style you want? Give me an approximate.
Oh.
Blues.
Blues.
If I can can pick one.
You like the blues, eh?
I have a lot of CDs of Johnny Lee Hooker, B.B. King, and that sort of things, and I really like it. Oh, yeah. Got the blues. Got the blues. For the sun and moon. Yeah. All the way live. Just for you. Just for you. The sun and moon. Putting your minds together. Just for you. Yeah, just for you. Try to research things all day and night for the sun and just for you. We try to make it all the way. Try to make it. We try and stay. Sun and moon groove. Just for you. Please roll the way live. Oh yeah. Thank you for being here in the hangout. We like it. If you want it. Really appreciate it. All research yet to do. We like it. Bleachers all the way live. Yeah, the sun and moon. Ooh, yeah.
Yay!
There you go.
Hey, that was brilliant. We're still waiting for.
Yeah, I hope my singing was a little bit bearable. Was I a little bit in tune?
That was good. I like that. Yeah.
You were perfect. Can I just say that Anthony hasn't come back yet? Can we do one more song, Chris?
Another song, yeah.
If he doesn't come back, we'll just move on till he comes back. But just in case he does in a couple of minutes, because they're supposed to be turning his computer on, please give us another one.
Yeah, something to that effect.
Ooh.
That was banjo, by the way.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you. We were playing that waiting for you to come back, Anthony.
I know. It's amazing. This machine is like top of the range, and the one downstairs is like basic. The one upstairs will do anything I want 10 times faster than like the one task that I ask it to do downstairs, and it just won't run a Hangout. 1.6 gigahertz processors will not run a Hangout. You can listen, but it won't compute it. So it just makes it ridiculous. So I've learned that I need a new system downstairs if I'm going to relax downstairs. It's quite formal in the office. It works fine, but it's too hard work. When I want to relax on a Sunday night, listening to a bit of Globebusters or whatever, I mean Sun and Moon Group, it's just not. I can't do it downstairs.
Yes, Anthony.
Right. Okay. Let me get my thingy back up. All right. So minimize this. Right, so if I move chat out of the way, dedicate that screen there, maximize that.
Your screen is black, though.
I know, it's because I'm not sharing it. I'm just trying not to share the thingy link. Right, so if I now share that, do you want to present me to everyone so that they can see it?
There you go.
Okay. I'm presenting.
Oh,
Yes.
Siri's probably pressed it at the same time as me.
That's all right. I think it says
There
that
you
I am
go.
presented. It's fine. All right. So if I, you see my screen now, yeah, the file. It's the file. It's the file browser, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
All right. So I click on the first image, and it's timed at 20th of March, 15, just before 9 a.m. Now I did this with an ND filter rather than a solar filter, because at 9 in the morning we're not getting direct sun, we're getting like angular sun, so it's not as powerful. And you're not meant to use a solar filter because it makes it too dark, unless it's at high noon or close to high noon, and it wasn't really close to high noon, it was just past dawn. So 9 in the morning. Now bear in mind, this is 2 years ago, and the UK had a full solar eclipse. Now, this is where it becomes the model makes predictions, or is it the pattern that makes predictions? Because 2 years after a solar eclipse in the UK, America really should get one. Maybe not, but probably it should do. But in any event, here is a picture taken that I took on a mobile phone through a glass window at the eclipse. And I was like, I realized that I was looking through double glazing. So there's 2 extra pieces of glass that I didn't really need to be there if it went outside. So the eclipse had obviously started at this point. And this is before I got into flat Earth. I just kept these images because I thought they were cool, because you don't see it that often. But you can see what I'm doing there. I've got the LED lighted window, and I've just literally got an ND filter, and I've got my mobile. And to get it to focus, I had to focus on the LED lighted window off screen, and then once it got focused, then move it back into the picture, take the picture, and then it'd lose focus straight away, because it was, I don't know what the camera was thinking, but it wasn't thinking what I wanted to see was what I wanted to see. It was looking at other things. But I did get the imagery that I wanted, and I realized I was getting quite good photos given the ridiculously like poor method that I was using. I was actually getting good stuff. Now I'm still sat in this room now. That image out the window is what I see right now if I look out the window. Obviously it's dark in a minute, but it's the same house, same window, same everything. So I went outside. That particular picture is where I've just got in between the diamonds on the LED lighted window. So I go outside on I think one of these pictures. See, I'm taking the picture. There we go. I'm outside now on the front of the house, and you can see by the house in front that it's getting dark. It's becoming silhouetted as we get towards the path of totality. Now we did get totality. Now I'm at the back of the house. We did get totality, right? But it doesn't show it on here at this point. And this is pretty much the last picture that I took, because once it hit totality, it was quite eerie actually, because I was kind of expecting dogs to start howling and, you know, weird TV sci-fi things that, you know, like weird stuff to happen. And it didn't really happen, but it was eerie because the absence of sun means cold, and it did go cold. the absence of sunlight means dark, and it did go dark. It wasn't pitch black, but it was dark enough for me to notice it, and it was like, ooh, I'm in the path of totality. But it wasn't pitch black the way that you'd expect it to be based on the fact that you're in totality. So what I would say is that if you are in the path of totality and you get to see this, don't expect it to go pitch black, because it's not going to do that. It's just going to get darker, and everything will become a silhouette, which is really freaky because it's broad daylight, yet everything goes dark. But there's two things that I regret not doing at the time. And obviously this is before I was flat earth. This is like probably 6 months before I'd even looked at it, before I'd even found it, let alone considered it. And the two things that I failed to do that I regret. Oh, by the way, that's the way it showed it on Sky News, which is not the way it actually happened. That's the way I saw it. And you can see that all I'm doing there is holding the ND filter. It wasn't a solar filter. It was just a 15 quid ND filter from Amazon or whatever, and it wasn't specialist in any way at all. But what I regret doing at the time, and had I have relived that moment again now, knowing what I know, I would have done two things differently. I'd have focused on, let me zoom into this, because you need to see this in zoom. Now, what I want to tell people to look out for is, from me, the moon was approaching from the right. It transitioned the sun, and then left to the left. So it should be over here somewhere. But what I would say is that on the approach to the sun, it was completely invisible. There was no evidence whatsoever that there was a celestial body on approach. You could see it whilst it was transiting the sun. But when it left the sun, again, there was absolutely no evidence whatsoever that there was some celestial body there. It wasn't that it was black. It was just invisible. It just wasn't there, which made me think two things at the time. And don't forget, this is pre-flat Earth. It made me think two things. It made me think, how the hell was that the moon when I can't even see it before or after, or indeed during? I couldn't establish that it was actually the moon that was doing it. So my first observation at the time was, how do I know that that was the moon? And the answer now is, I don't know. And that's why now, 2 years later, you guys are getting in America. And I'm thinking, I didn't think it was the moon when we had it. You guys should be thinking the same thing. So the question is, can you see it on approach? And can you see it when it's leaving? Because I don't think you'll see it either way. Now, I don't know if there's anything special that you can play around with, but you only get a few minutes that you can, like, I mean, it is awesome. I mean, it really is awesome. And you'll be awestruck. You'll be watching it and you'll be going, oh my God. And it is amazing. But just also consider the possibility that it might not be the moon that's causing it, because you can't see it on the approach and you can't see it as it leaves. So how do we know it is the moon? That is the first point. And the other thing I didn't do that I regret not doing, or I wish I'd have thought about at the time, was look around your horizon 360 degrees. See if you can see that moon anywhere else. If you know anybody that lives in America, in Australia or India, or anywhere that's not like local to you, ask them to look out the window. Like, ring them an hour before and just say, look, do me a favor, go outside and see if you can see the moon. I'll be looking for the moon where I am in the UK. And anybody else anywhere else in the world should also look for it, because I've got a funny feeling that it's not the moon that's causing it, and the moon may be seen elsewhere. But obviously everyone's saying, hey, look over here. And we're all looking in that same direction, but nobody's looking over there. And if you'd look over there, you'd find that that's where the moon actually is. Therefore, this is not the moon that's causing it, because there's the moon over there. Now, I didn't look around me. I was so awestruck by what I was looking at. I was like, wow. This is like supernatural kind of thing. It was just amazing. But I was so focused on what we were looking at, and I wanted to absorb it all in. And by the way, I didn't look through any kind of special goggles or out like that. It's bullshit. What I think they're telling you about the goggles, make sure that you don't damage your eyes and all that. I think it's because they don't want you to realize that you can't see the moon on the approach or on the leaving part of it, because it doesn't appear to be there. It's not that it's a black disc on a blue background. It's just completely invisible, which makes me consider the possibility that whatever it is that's causing the blackout of the sun could actually be on the sun itself. It could be like a pirate's eye, a pirate's patch on a pirate's head, rather than a celestial body passing in front of it. Because I couldn't work out whether it was a celestial body passing in front of it, or whether it was a patch over a captain's eyepiece. So two things. See if you can notice it on the approach. See if you can notice it when it leaves. But whilst you've got totality, just spin your head around 360 and see if you can see the moon anywhere else. Because I didn't think it was the moon. Yes, it's the only celestial body up there, and on the heliocentric model, it's the only thing it can be. But I also accept that Lilith is up there, although I know it's not Lilith because Lilith is on the other side of the zodiac at this time of the year. It's not close to us at the moment. It's miles away, so it's not Lilith. But Rahu and Ketu, that's definitely a possibility.
Anthony, Chris doesn't think it's the moon either, do you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same opinion. Like, we don't have 100% solid evidence that it is in fact the moon, because it's like Anthony says, you can't see it approaching, you can't see it during, and you can't see it as it leaves.
No,
and it's always 100%. It's a small miracle of coincidence that solar eclipses only ever happen on a new moon as well, right? It's so right. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know that that in itself, they only happen on a new moon. Why is that? Something's making the new moon significant, and it isn't the fact that it's a new moon. It's something else that's making it significant, in my opinion. But what we could do with is, if anybody's got one of those FLIR cameras that picks up heat, or some kind of different viewing camera that picks up different frequencies or whatever. So this is not something that I'm skilled on at all. But if there's anything out there other than a normal optical camera that we all see and understand, flick it up at the sun if you can. Particularly one of those FLIR thermal imaging cameras where you put like on houses to see about heat losses and stuff like that. Because I don't know, I found it was weird. So my two regrets are, I mean, you can see how I did it. I've just put up my little my filter to it, but I regret not doing a 360 and looking all the way around me and seeing could I see the moon anywhere else. And even if it can only be on the path that the moon normally travels on, but I have seen the moon on different paths before, particularly around Christmas time, the winter equinox. I've seen the moon off its track in a different location in the sky that's not on the normal path that it normally takes. And at the time, I didn't think too much about it because I didn't really understand it. But when it comes towards Christmas in the UK, I'm going to be showing because that's the path where that is now with that sun. The moon travels on that same path for me. But I've seen the moon in different places, but it's only been around the winter equinox. And it was totally off kilt. It wasn't where it should be. But I didn't think too much about it at the time. But so, yeah, the two things are, can you see the moon on the approach? Or the thing that's blocking out the sunlight? Can you see it on the approach? Can you see it as it's leaving? And just do a 360 and see, is there anything else in the sky that looks like it could be the moon anywhere else? Yeah, it should be on its normal path. But to be honest with you, once you realize it's not a ball, I'm kind of with the view that pretty much anything goes. And there is the possibility that it could be. I mean, I'll give you an example. Dazza, the cameraman, he's a big ball Earth protagonist. He will not accept in any way that it's anything other than the moon. But he told me that he's been having debates and discussions with people that believe in Nibiru. Now, whether you accept Nibiru or believe in Nibiru, I'm not interested in. But they believe that there's a red dwarf out there that could be causing these eclipses. And I said to Dazza, you're not trying to convince me that this could be a red dwarf. And he said, no. He said, but they think it is. And I said, yeah, but that's not acceptable because it's not part of the heliocentric model. And from Dazza, the cameraman's point of view, you can't even cite that as a possibility because if it's not part of the heliocentric model, it's not the cause because you're either on the heliocentric side or you're not. And if you're on the heliocentric side, which he is, then you can't even suggest it as a possibility because it's not part of their argument in the first place. And I said, Dazza, no, we're not even playing that game. It's not part of your model. We're not even entertaining the possibility of a red dwarf from you. If we were talking about red dwarfs from somebody that believed in Nibiru, then maybe, but from Dazza the cameraman, who's a heliocentric priest, no, it's not part of your model. You're not even, we're not going to discuss it with you at all. So I've kind of like stamped on that one as a possibility because, I mean, don't forget, we can see this evidence of an eclipse from the UK according to their model. And it means...
Anthony, so you're doing your trip tomorrow then?
Well, no, because I've not had any ball earthers that are prepared to do the run with me because I suspect that they're scared because I think that they don't want to I think that they don't want to run the chance that they'll not see it and therefore put up with a load of flat earthers on the way home. But I'm going to do it from a similar location that's a lot nearer to me that I don't have to travel like 2.5 hours. but I'm going to get the same kind of cutout that is predicted from Hoylake, but I'm just at a different elevation, and it's basically the same. I wanted to head west more because it makes it more likely and more prominent by maybe half a degree. But in essence, I don't really need to go that far. I just wanted a day trip, but not a single ball has took me up on it. And I do believe it's because they know that we're not going to get this evidence from where we're looking at. It's going to be a normal sunset, which means that that sun cannot be 93 million miles away. Because if the sun is very, very far away, then and their model predicts it, if we then get,
I kind of thought that you know, with your eclipse dark, but it didn't get totally dark, which means it can't be that wide, then, can it?
it's not that it's that wide, it's more that the sun's that far away. If this happens in real world, then it means that the sun is a big distance away, because that parallax of the moon it necessitates that the sun is a big distance away, because it's to do with how far away the moon is to the Earth, but also at the same time how far away the sun is in relation to the moon, and that ratio, that is kind of like like a perfect storm. It produces this as a predictable, totally intuitive consequence. And if this doesn't happen, it means that the model is wrong. It's that simple, right? But I betted my channel with Slice Barcane. I said, I will give you my password if this happens, because it's not going to happen. We know that the sun is roughly, give or take a little bit, on the same line as the moon. It's about the same size. It's about the same distance away, give or take maybe 5%, 10%, but it's definitely not 93 million miles away. Whatever distance that moon is, the sun's not that far behind it. So that's why I'm prepared to bet my channel and bet my password to my channel, and I will delete it. I'll start up a fresh one.
It's something I was going to ask you too, Anthony. Since I've seen a total eclipse, but I mean I was just a kid when it came through Canada back in 1976 or whatever it was. But during totality, you had mentioned that you noticed a perceivable and probably measurable, if people could measure it, would be a good idea too. Temperature change, right? Was it?
Yeah, it was. It was very noticeable. Yes, it was.
So during that time, the temperature changed. So as soon as it went to totality, you felt a temperature change instantly. So
it was like going from summer to winter within 10 seconds. It was a noticeable absence of heat. Yeah.
Right. So if that's the case, and it, in theory, on the heliocentric model, is supposed to take 8.5 minutes for any radiation from the sun to reach the Earth,
which is a mockery.
How exactly does that work if you can split a change in 10 seconds, right?
Well, yeah,
or less, right? Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, this is where science tries to persuade you that your eyes are wrong. And they're telling you that yeah, you're right, that this 8 minutes, 9 minutes worth of light traveling from the sun gets intersected by this celestial body, which they're calling the moon. Honest to God, I swear on my mum's life, there's nothing that makes me think that was the moon that was doing it. You couldn't, yeah, it may have been the same size. And what was even more bizarre is that once it got to the point where it was no longer moving, you know, like it was blocking out from the right-hand side of the sun, and then it got to the middle point where it's right smack bang in the middle. Not only did it stay there for a period of time that was longer than it was disproportionately long. You would expect it to, as it disappeared one side, it would then start to reappear instantly the other side, because they say it's 400 times further away, 400 times bigger. There shouldn't be this, did you have to let it linger moment. It was like a trump in a lift. It didn't disperse. It stayed there for a while, and you're looking at it and you're thinking, why is it not transiting the moon? Why is it not? Why is the moon not transiting the sun in a continuous path? And
that's why I think that during totality, like I said, it comes in pretty fast, and then it goes total. It'll linger for like 2.5 minutes, and then it goes out really fast. Right? You get the diamond ring for 30 seconds. So that's
that one fact in itself goes against the heliocentric model, because at no point in their model does the moon stop moving.
Correct. Right, so then that tells me also that we're looking up towards the interference pattern and through a cone, right? So the cone is actually flaring out. That's why you would actually see a bit of a delay if what's causing it is actually a electromagnetic interference and light cancellation due to that interference.
Well, you know what? It's the way I saw it was kind of like, you know, when you push something up a hill and you get to the crest of the hill and it gets to the point where it gets very easy and you don't feel like pushing anymore because you know that you're at the crest of the hill, and then you can just let a little tiny push and it goes down the other side of the hill. It's kind of like the moon was getting up and over the crest of a hill, and it got to the crest of the hill and just lingered for a second longer than, well, a minute longer than what you expected it to. And it was almost in a state of equilibrium. And then it was like the roller coaster where it goes whoosh and then disappears again. And it was like, why was it even lingering? I mean, that was a third thing that I noticed that at the time. To be honest, thinking about it now, I'd forgotten about it until you just mentioned it at that point. But you're quite right. It got to the point where it got to totality where the moon was completely blocking out the sun, and you could watch it get smaller. The glare was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it dispersed and went away, and then nothing for ages. And the only logical explanation from that is that the moon is bigger than the sun, because it's still traveling at the same speed, but it's bigger than the sun, and it's passing behind the bigger object in the front, which we perceive as it's lingering. But in actual fact, the thing's bigger in the foreground and it's blocking it out, and there's a little bit more leeway that we're giving it credit for because we perceive it as lingering. But actually, it's because the thing behind it's a little bit smaller and it's a little bit further away. So it feels as though, from our perspective, that it's lingering. But it's one of the most bizarre things that you'll ever experience in your life. But don't forget to look around for the moon, look in other places for the moon, because I believe that somebody somewhere in the earth will see it. But also, can you see it on the approach? Can you see it as it's leaving? Because once that point where the sun is fully back into 100% again and the moon's no longer touching it, it's not there. And it's like, what? Which makes me think that it's possible and probable that it's actually the sun that's being blocked out by itself in some way. It's not something in front of it that makes that. I mean, think about it. If there's meant to be a moon that's 400 times smaller and 400 times closer to us, and it happens to line up absolutely perfectly to give it complete coverage, I mean, what's the chances of that? I mean, in terms of orbital mechanics, I mean, the chances of that being real is so slim that it's almost like evolution's true. Because it's ridiculously, it's so improbable.
Yeah.
400 times smaller, 400 times closer, and it happens to pass the perfect pass, and it blocks out all of the sun. Come on, that's not the result of that's not the consequence of a cosmic explosion trillions of years ago that formed the Earth. That's intelligent design if it is doing what they say it's doing. But when you watch
Venus is exactly the same thing, only it's 10 times to the ratio, right? So it's supposed to be the same size as the Earth, but 10 times as far away as the moon is relative. And so you would think that, well, if it's scaled up 10 times, well, we should see approximately the same size of eclipse from Venus that you would from the moon, if what they say is true as far as light traveling in straight lines through space, right? But we never see. You'll see a transit of Venus and a transit of Mercury, but you'll never see an eclipse.
Correct. And the interesting thing about the inverse square law is if you Google the reference and what it actually means, they use the word squared in it. So that if an object is 400 times smaller, 400 times bigger, and it is 400 times further away, that kind of goes against the idea that the inverse square laws applies because it's squared. If it was squared, it would only be something like 136 times bigger, but 400 times further away because it's a squared reference. It's not a proportionate reference. So it's like, hang on, it can't be 400 times bigger and 400 times further away because the inverse square law applies both to the light of it and how it's perceived to us. So it can't be 400 and 400, but that's what they tell us it is. But everything in your body will tell you that A, it's not the moon, B, whatever it is that's approaching is invisible, and C, where is the moon? Look round. You may well see it. I'm not saying you will, but I also think that if we live on a flat Earth, and the moon and the sun are relatively close to each other in terms of there's a correlation between their proximity. It makes sense that we're going to see some form of celestial activity, maybe 90 minutes before, 60 minutes before, 40 minutes before, because what would happen on a flat Earth is that the eclipse itself would take place somewhere over the North Atlantic, and between us and the Americas, if we were looking, like you guys would have to look east and we would have to look west, but it would be higher in the sky, we would see an element of celestial activity because that would then support massively the flat Earth idea that the sun and the moon are very close and they've eclipsed over the Atlantic maybe 90 minutes before they told us, and no one's looking there because everyone's saying, hey, this is where the eclipse is. Look over here at this exact time and you'll see the eclipse. Don't look 90 minutes before because that'll confirm a flat Earth. But if it is 90 minutes or 60 minutes or even 40 minutes before, and we do see celestial activity, and that's this kind of guise that I'm showing you on screen now, it makes sense that that would be confirmation of a flat Earth, and the eclipse is happening over the North Atlantic somewhere. No one can see it, and they're also not telling us about it. But further to that, in England, we're not being told, hey, you can see this eclipse from here if you're in the right part of the country. We're being told you need to be in North America. Now, strictly speaking, that's a lie by omission, because what they should be saying is, yeah, you can see it in North America, but if you're on the west coast of England, you can see a partial eclipse. But you need to be on the west coast, and you need to be as far south as you can. So technically, it's wrong to say that you need to be in America, because that isn't true. You can be on the west coast of England and see a partial eclipse, but we ain't being told that. We're being told you need to be in America. That's not true. So is it an intentional withholding of information, or is it a, well, it's only the very tips of it, so it's not important enough for us to mention it, so fuck it, we're not going to say anything? Because I think they're deliberately not telling us that we can see it, because they don't want us to be looking up there, because there's nothing going to be there, but the model predicts that it has to be there, and we should be seeing some elements of eclipse. And like I say, it should be like this one. Let me pull this one back up. That's what we should see from where we are.
Yeah, and you mentioned the counter observations too, right? People that aren't even in the path of totality as far as celestial activity, right? If you're on the dark side of the Earth in the globe model, looking at the stars, and there's an eclipse happening on the other side of the Earth, and all the light is now canceled out for the most part, right? Temporarily.
You should be looking towards.
You should see
Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
Right. True. Yeah, and you should also see the stars and those types of planets become a whole lot brighter temporarily, because now all the light is gone in the entire plane temporarily. So all the light on the other side of the planet would become a whole lot brighter, relative, because the counter light becomes brighter.
Yeah, this is the thing that I want to. This is the one thing that I don't get, and maybe it's me being a bit dim. But if this is the moon that's approaching from the right, and it was going from a right to a left, if this really is the moon, why can we not see a halo going all the way around the moon, where the sunlight is catching the side of the moon that we can't see, but it's only the outer edge of it? Because at all times, half the moon is visible. Half the moon is lit by the sun. Now, does it mean that we should get like a very thin outline all the way around the moon, where we can see the other side to the sun lighting it up? Or are we in total shade and we should see nothing at all, because we're behind all of it? So only the side that's totally opposite to us should only get light, and we can't see any of it. Because I personally, I accept that we should see a ring around the outside of the outside of the moon, indicating that the other side of it's being lit, but we see nothing. And I'm like, hang on. And even before it starts hitting the sun, we should see like this side of this side of the moon being lit up. And then when it's over on this side, we should see this side of the moon lit up, because that's the side that's getting it. Because even if it is totally black, then it's not right in front of the moon. It's not right in front of the sun at this point. And when it's here, we should see this side of the moon being lit. And there's absolutely nothing there. There's just an absence of light. And I'm like, none of that makes sense. The physics for that should be, we should see an element of that being the moon. Nothing is there. And it's like, why is that? It just makes no sense.
Stop clouding the issue with facts.
See, this is what happens when you apply logic and reason, which is the mantra for science. For a lot of ball earthers, they all say logic and reason, the preponderance of evidence. But when you do apply logic and reason, they go, oh, no, that's just bullshit. And it's like, no, this is logic and reason.
You can't win either way then, can you?
What? Say that again.
Oh, I just want to say that we have been going for 3 hours now. Maybe tomorrow, and we've been doing pyramids. Whether everybody just wants to have a little sum up of today, then.
Well, I think that tomorrow is going to be a crazy day for Americans, because they've not seen this for 100 years, which in itself, that one fact, you guys don't apparently see it for 100 years. What's the probability that that's the case? Bearing in mind that the moon orbits the sun, the moon orbits the Earth once every 27.4 days. What's the chances of that only ever happening once every 100 years that America gets it? That's not probable on the heliocentric model. It should happen regularly at a set interval, way more frequent than 100 years. In my opinion, that's the way it makes sense to me. Yet they say it's only every 100 years. And that's like... Hello?
Was there a question?
No, sorry. I thought Series interrupted. I was just waiting for Series to ask its question. Maybe not.
I'm gonna bring up a quick little share here too, just to kind of sum up and follow up on what you're saying. Is this is quite a significant solar eclipse? Like its timing of it and its location. It's passing through the 7 Salems. There's 7 towns at Santos.
It's black my end. I don't know if it's black everybody else's end.
Well, I can see it.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to get back.
Sharing. It's big. My computer is lagging.
Yeah, it is. Karen's is terrible.
Yeah, so it's Santos had shared there with us the other day that the path. I'm getting some feedback there. The path, anyway. The path of this eclipse is passing through like seven towns in the United States that are all named Salem, right? Starting with Salem in Washington, and it just keeps on going through Kentucky, Missouri, you know, all the way on the other side. Right? Each one is. So the path of these towns is actually on the path of totality, laid right out on the ground. And I thought that was rather phenomenal and certainly not a coincidence. And obviously the early settlers of United States and so forth that built those towns knew exactly what they were doing. And they had these predicted in advance. And also this eclipse marks the start of a new solar cycle. And from all the research I've done, it's marking a dramatic cooling period, that we could be heading into a cooling period. So just for folks to kind of keep an eye on that. Yeah, it's quite significant, this one.
It is significant because if it is 100 years in terms of the frequency, I mean, would you agree, Chris, that seems unlikely given the heliocentric model in terms of we get one every month? All right, it may not always hit the Earth, but I mean, it's a fair chance that it's going to hit at least a quarter that America's in sometimes. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense that it's only once every 100 years or so. That doesn't make statistical sense or mathematical sense given the frequency of how often this happens.
Yeah, the eclipse will repeat. Like, so when they mean by the 100-year cycle is that every 100. It's actually, I think it's 111 years to be precise. Every 111 years, the eclipse path will repeat itself, but every 111 years when it occurs, it moves 11 degrees to the north and then starts to track 11 at 11-degree increments back down to the south. So it's an 11-degree cycle every time it moves, and also occurs every 111 years. And this is the 7th cycle of the 7th. I mean, so there's so much going on in this particular one. I just find it fascinating, right? This is the 7th cycle of the 7th Sabbath of one of the Jesuit calendar types of Sabbath things that they use in their gematria. And yeah, it's going through the 7 towns of Salem, which is where all the witch trials were. And Santos ran us through that the other day too. And it's like, you're kidding me, right? Yeah, but no, it's true. Right?
Which kind of links in nicely to the comment in chat now. INFE says light doesn't really bend; it slows down at different rates in different media. I agree, absolutely. That's exactly what it does. But the minute you start talking about curvature of the Earth, it's amazing how much light suddenly starts bending. Especially from Mick West's Metabunk site, that light bends a lot on that website. And it doesn't even after the bendiness, it doesn't match reality, yet he still claims it's curvature and refraction. So I agree, light doesn't bend the way that we're told it does. It does slow down in different rates in different media, but that's not bending. Completely agree. But now you're talking about these different towns that are all called Salem. and it just happens to line up with the eclipse. It's like Salem doesn't mean anything at any other point in time apart from this one occasion where it all happens to be Salem, and it's like, what the hell? So it's the same thing as curvature. The bendy light only happens with curvature in the same way that Salem only seems to happen with the eclipse, because there doesn't seem to be any other connection. I'm sure there might be a connection, and I'm being ignorant, but it just seems to be the case that they all line up with this one eclipse. Come on.
Yeah, well, they positioned the towns accordingly. Yeah, you know, in advance, 200 years in advance, right? In some cases,
yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah,
and they expect us to believe this without realizing. I mean, can you imagine if it was like ball earthers that were arguing this in favor of it being a round Earth, spherical Earth, and it was flat earthers that were the majority? Can you imagine the reaction that they would get if they said something like, "Yeah, but look at all these towns being called Salem," and we're like, "Yeah, come on, it's coincidence, you idiot." Yeah, when it's the other way around and it's us, it's kind of like, come on, they must be naming these towns on purpose because they're all lined up on like to follow this path. No, it's a coincidence, man. Yeah, right.
As far as the light slowing down, I mean, I agree with that as well, too, 100%. And they will not tell you that, you know, that light slows down in different mediums, including the medium of a magnetic field, right? And then if you consider that, well, let me think about that for a second. You know, photons travel from any illuminating object on magnetic fields. That means that every photon gets slowed down relative to the magnetic field that it creates in every one of the other photons that it interferes with on its path or journey or interactions, which means, let me see. You know, speed of light can't be constant. Period. No, so there goes E equals mc squared, and there goes the entire theory of relativity, there goes all the quantum physics, and there goes everything else right out the window.
Yeah, but you know that the speed of light can't be constant because, and it can't be an absolute either, because you've got two stars that will face opposite each other in the galaxy, and the light from them stars is heading towards each other at all times. Relatively speaking, one's doing that's double the speed of light. I know it's not in isolation, but in relative terms, it is. You go in double the speed of light, they're heading towards each other. What happens when them two lights hit each other in terms of science? Nothing. But I'm sure there'll be somebody that comes up with some kind of equation to say, oh, a cosmic explosion happens or something ridiculous. But we all know that doesn't happen. And it's just, but what I would say is, though, that although I agree that light slows down in different densities of substance that it may shine through, we know that light does refract when it goes through different layers of density as well as slow down. Because we do see that in the thingy, I forgot what it's called now.
Prisms and things, and water molecules and everything else. Yeah, rainbows.
I can't remember what it's called now, and I had a full-on argument with it recently with Mick West.
In a prism,
where the light refracts, and when it hits water, it's like 700 times more dense, and it does change its angle. It's the something law. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, come on, Zach. You're in chat. You'll remind me what it's called. It's called the something law. Oh, my God. I had a full-on fight with it with Mick West, and I can't remember what it's called. Not Boolean's law. It's...
Kirchhoff's?
No, it's where the light... Snell's law. Thank you, Aaron Moorfield.
Oh, Snell's law, yeah.
Snell's law. So although it does slow down, it does change the angle, but it doesn't make it bend. Bending is an arc. We don't see light bending like an arc, but we do see an angular change caused by apparently or appearing to slow down when it hits different densities, if it's still translucent enough to be able to see it. And that is the application of Snell's law, which again is the reason why we don't see bendy light in the atmosphere, because there is no arcing in light in the atmosphere. But they say but when it comes to the stars, the light doesn't bend. Isn't it funny how they have different levels of like acceptable science when it suits? They'll move the goalposts for stars, but they'll not do it for curvature.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's that's the thing. The whole system they have set up is nothing but circular references and renormalization of equations to force the next equation, right? It just goes round and round and round and round, and there's never any truth that can come out of it because it always references back to itself, self-similar systems upon self-similar systems to infinity, right?
Yeah, and what I'd like to just play a little clip here of Brenda. She was in Bro Sanchez's chat the other day, and she got it was quite embarrassing from Brenda's point of view, but this is what she actually said, and I'll just say it so that you know what she's about to say. She says, saying something's bullshit doesn't make it true. This is her saying it.
Saying something's bullshit doesn't make it so.
Saying something's bullshit doesn't make it so. In exactly the same way, saying something's true doesn't make it so. So like saying that it's a curved earth doesn't make it so. Saying that axial rotation is really a thing doesn't make it so. Yet that's what they say. That's the mantra. And it doesn't happen. We don't see any evidence to support curvature unless you got a little bit of barrel distortion at 115,000 feet. But yeah, we'll give you that. But you're not going to give us the if we're going to give you a little bit of barrel distortion as being curvature, you got to give us that boats are not disappearing behind no horizons, dropping behind the curve of the earth. It's ridiculous. But yeah, saying something's bullshit doesn't make it so. True. Saying something's curved doesn't make it curved either. So it's just double standards all the time. Time.
None of it's correct.
It's an interesting time to be alive, I can tell you that, because, you know, the whole thing, you can actually see it. It's on a daily basis. So I can almost see it now, that the entire system is rapidly starting to collapse. Everything is starting to come down, you know, rapidly, right? Science is falling apart. Quantum's falling apart. CO2, global warming's falling apart. You know, carbon taxes, people are starting to wake up and say, hey, that's not true, right? They're not going to stand for being carbon taxed much longer when they realize that CO2 is heavier than air and actually sinks and feeds plants, right? It has nothing to do with global warming, right? And I'm just waiting for there's going to be a peak here, I think, you know, at some point in time. People are going to wake up to the facts and the truth, and it's just going to go like a rubber band effect, right? It's going to be stretched until it can't stretch no more, and it's just going to go snap, right? Yeah. So I'm just waiting to see what happens here.
What we should do as a token of appreciation, whether you agree with Dubé or not on his 200 proofs that the Earth is not a spinning ball, we should use that as like a template, and we should expand on his rules, and we should cite it as the Bible in terms of a reference point, so we can say Rule 46, there's the evidence that proves that that point is true, whatever 46 might be. Rule 72, there's the evidence that proves that point is true. And let's just say that the rocket thing happens with the 4 helium balloons all vented together, and the rocket doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And then if there's, I don't know whether he cited one of the proofs being that a rocket doesn't work in space. I'm sure he probably did. But then we could go back to that particular rule and say, hey, Rule 126, there's the evidence that proves it does not happen. So we should use it as a reference point to basically add to all of his 200 proofs. And I mean, so what if he gets a bit more money from it? So what? But at least if we can all refer to his rules and then start evidencing these rules to be true, not only will we like solidify a lot of these rules, but we'll be able to weed out the weaker ones so that we don't have to cite them in future discussions. But we should use it as the commandments, the 200 commandments type of thing. And not because I'm a Dubé fan. I'm not really that much of a fan. I don't think a lot of his stuff's that good. But at the end of the day, it's the template that we all work on. We all talk about like how the horizon rises to eye level, and they say no, it doesn't, and it does. It doesn't do what they say on a ball. But all these things that he talks about is kind of the essence that we all speak about. And maybe we should start populating it with the evidence that we've been gathering, like lighthouses from too far away. I mean, there were like 5 or 6 rules that cited lighthouses from distances. And when I went back over his video recently, and I realized that the lighthouses that I was looking at were even further than this furthest cited one at I think it was like 13 or 15 or 17 miles or something like that. And I was seeing lighthouses at 39 miles, and I was like, whoa, I've just kind of way gone further than what he cited is at. But maybe we should revisit the 200 proofs and start populating it with the evidence so that other people that come back to it go, hey, these aren't just proofs. A lot of these are supported with factual evidence that people have gathered that really does support it. Shout out to Joey
Anybody can answer that one?
Well, I mean, we don't have to agree.
Everybody's quiet, Anthony.
Yeah, we don't have to agree that all of his proofs are strong, but we definitely need to concede that some of them are really strong, and the strongest ones we should really put things to them and bolster them and let the ball earthers come back with it. I mean, they'll come back with the official narrative, and they'll parrot it no matter what. Oh, Karen B, I missed your message, did I? Let me have a look. Karen B, I have some P900 footage that blows Mick West calculator away. Do you know, Karen? the Blackpool illuminations are on as from the 1st of September. And I was criticised because the Ferris wheel wasn't visible in some of my footage, but they didn't know at the time that the Ferris wheel was under a stage of reconstruction, and it was currently off because they were fixing it. But they start up again in the 1st of September, and the minute that starts up, literally, I'm going to be camping out at Rill, not just Hoylake, but I'm going to be going to Rill, because Hoylake was 27.9 miles away, and we could see all of the tower. But around further around the coast at Rill, that's 39 miles away. And on good authority, I believe I can see the tower, even though we have been, Ranty's been over there once to try and see it himself, and he couldn't see it for whatever reason. I know that we can see the tower from Rill, and that's 39 miles away. And with the illuminations on, if the tower's visible at 39 miles away, I mean, I don't know how many times the towers drop behind the curvature of the Earth at that distance, but going from 27.9 miles up to 39 miles away, and I know I can see it, and that kind of destroys it. So we'll be using the P900 and the illuminations in conjunction to prove that we can see them from 39 miles away, and that kind of just not only just makes it like a ball Earth killer, but it makes it a ball Earth killer times 2, 2.5, 3, because this thing can't be visible so far away on the model. So
you know what the main ball killer for me is. You might know what my ground is.
Yeah, you're going to say the molten iron loses its magnetism, therefore gravity doesn't exist.
Yeah, nor does any life, right?
Yeah. Is that right? Did I take your words out your mouth?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The Curie temperature of iron being lower than its melting point means the ball cannot have a molten iron core, and because of that, right, it cannot if it was in their theory hotter than its Curie temperature, it cannot maintain a magnetic field. And if that's the case, then there is no life anywhere in this so-called realm, because, right, on the ball model, we'd all be dead, right?
Yeah. A lot of people buy into Dell's, beyond the imaginary curve. His point that all water does not conform to the outside of any shape; it conforms to the inside. And unless there's a containment vessel, there is no curvature of the Earth. And a lot of people buy into that. And it does make logical and practical sense, but we can't prove it. We know it does it on a small basis, but on a big, vast ocean, we don't know whether it does or not. So that's the problem with that particular argument. We can't verify whether that is actually true or not. In essence, it's the problem with his narrative. But what we can verify with certainty is that the curvature of the Earth does exist over the waters. And it's basically applying the Bedford Levels experiment. Can you imagine if the Bedford Levels experiment had a P900? There wouldn't have been a fallout, and it just wouldn't have happened. All this would have been settled back then.
Well, that's the thing too, right? The ball model has no basis in any scientific fact, right? Even the proof of gravity that uses the Cavendish experiment, there's no basis of scientific fact. The Foucault pendulum, all those things fall apart, right? And the reason for that is magnetism. That's why I keep going back to, in our models, is go back to magnetism, go back to magnetism. Right?
Yeah, but magnetism's not given much weight in terms of science. They see it as an attractive force or a repellent force, and it doesn't really go any further than that.
Because they don't want you to learn about it, because you'll stumble upon free energy and dielectricity, and you'll realize that all fresh water flows towards salt water. You'll realize that the Cavendish experiment was influenced by magnetism because the balls were made of lead, right? And the Foucault pendulum was made of brass, right? And as the magnetic field moves, it alters the pendulum, which is another good experiment for people to do during this eclipse, right? There is an alias effect that happens during these eclipses. If you have a swinging pendulum, and as it passes over, you'll see a change in the pendulum.
Yeah, but the problem with that one though is that the Cavendish experiment doesn't seem to validate up in any event. So if you were doing the Cavendish experiment or even the Foucault's pendulum whilst the eclipse was happening, on the basis that it doesn't validate up in the first place, I mean, what are you realistically going to get? You're going to get the assertion of the point that it doesn't validate up by it not doing what it should be doing, but probably doing it worse. I mean, it's going to add to it, but not necessarily prove it, because it's already not doing it in the first place, right?
No, but you're proving that the sun and moon are interacting with the surface of the Earth and electromagnetic field, causing a change in the pendulum during an eclipse, right? So if you're actually proving the connection of the bodies to electricity and the magnetism, right?
I tell you what would be interesting to do. Good times for all is just what will it affect my compass? Those that are in America that are observing the totality, get your compass out and flick it on. Well, flick it into your hand and see what happens. Does it still point the way that it was pointing before, or is the moon passing in front of
the
it?
iPhone compass.
Yeah, it has to be a real magnetic, high-end magnetic compass. It's, like a military style.
Can you imagine if it started doing this? Can you imagine if it started doing this state of discontinuity where it just starts spinning randomly in no particular direction and you're looking at it and you go, what? And then the moon moves out the way and then it flicks back to around to north. That would be an interesting observation.
And that's what the pendulum is supposed to do too, right? That's the thing I'm getting to, is that compasses, pendulums, gyroscopes, right? If you have a gyroscope spinning underneath an eclipse, it should actually kind of, all the ones we say that the gyroscopes prove stationary Earth. Well, let's see what happens during an eclipse. Take those same ones that we're using to prove the flat model and observe it during an eclipse and see if there's any change.
And another good one would be to light a candle and see, does the candle change its flame size? Because in the absence of the, because we know that I can't remember who it was. Somebody lit a candle, put 5 candles on a window ledge in the direct moonlight, and then he put 5 candles not on the window ledge, and all 5 candles on the window ledge in the direct moonlight burnt. Well, which way around did it go? I think it burnt longer because it was colder and therefore burnt brighter or something like. I can't remember which way around it did. Yep. But they all did the same. All 5 on the window ledge did the same thing, and when they were off the window ledge, they did something different. And it was basically the burn time was longer. I can't remember which way around it went now, but it'd be interesting whether a candle would extinguish itself or would it get brighter, or what would happen. I mean, I know it would be a relative brightness, but would it get a bigger flame? Would it be more intense, or would it become more blue? Or what would happen what would a candle do in the middle of an eclipse?
Yeah. No, you're right. It's because of the polarization and the magnetic field change, right? It changes the burn rate of the flame. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I wonder is like whether or not radio transmissions would become clearer, or would you lose radio signals? Because wouldn't that affect radio waves to the extent that if the magnetic field's allowing the radio waves to permeate through the environment or through the stratosphere or wherever it is that the radio waves go through, does it have an effect on the radio frequencies, or does it create this null and void period where you can't get a signal because it just goes white noise? So I'm going to have my radio on in the background and see, does it have any effect on it? So it's like I said, the minute you realize it's not a ball, anything goes, because anything can happen. So I don't mind being a little bit crazy suggesting stuff, because, I mean, it's not a ball, guys. Whatever it is, it's not a ball the size they tell us. It could be the size of Jupiter. I've not ruled that out, but it's definitely not a ball the size they tell us it is. So anything goes. We can kind of predict anything and see what happens, because we don't have $60 million a day. It doesn't matter whether we're right or wrong. What's interesting is that we're all thinking and just seeing what happens. I tell you what would be another interesting observation. If you took the laser, if you got a laser pen and just see if you could shine your laser pen through different through different things, because laser light always travels in a straight line. Maybe shine your laser up to the backside of the moon and see, does it do anything, or move it just off the moon, like just to one side, and does it bend, or does it, just play with anything, just see what happens. I know it shouldn't make any difference, but you'd be surprised what weird shit happens if it is magnetic, because we can't see magnetism and we can't see what it does other than the effects of it. So maybe it's got a strong enough pull because it's lined up perfectly with it and it creates a perfect polarity that if you moved it off to one side, it would correct it and bend it back towards the moon or something like that. I don't know. But it's definitely weird stuff that we should be testing things like this just to see what happens. And if nothing happens, not lost. Even water going down a drain. During totality, does it still spin, or does it just vacuum out without any spin? Just weird things like that. Does it have any effect on it at all? Because it might be that water goes down the opposite way whilst in totality, but when it comes out of totality, it goes back the other way. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing at stuff that might change, but it really could be anything.
Is that a magnet?
Yeah.
Ooh. No, water's magnetic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Water's influenced by magnetism, so if there is a magnetic field variation caused by the eclipse.
Very cool, Chris.
Did you see the experiment, Anthony?
Yeah, I saw it.
Go on.
Did you see that?
Which one? Which
Just
one?
showing you on the screen there. Did you see it?
Oh, hang on,
One
hang
there.
on. I've got the wrong thing open. Hang on. Oh, go on. I see my lighter now. Go on.
And a magnet. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, very clear.
Are you saying that it's attracting the light?
Well, of course. Yeah.
Are you not causing that by wind, the movement of air?
I'll do it slow.
That's got to be caused by the movement of air, surely.
No. Electromagnetic fields. Electromagnetic fields influence fire, and absolutely. Yeah. That's how we control them in plants. Right?
And those are the kind of things if you are messing around with some magnets, you can see all kinds of things happening. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Live science, boys. Live science. And girls.
Great, huh?
Can I just say now we've been going for 3.5 hours.
This is Karen saying, I'm shattered and I want to go to bed, guys. Can we go to bed, please?
Well,
no, we talk after the hangout as well, but it's just this is probably enough time.
Tony, before we go, check out the beginning of the video, because Chris showed experiments using magnets to separate water into its respective gases.
Okay.
And anyone in the chat, I put links so you can see pictures of the rovers and video of the rovers going up the conduits, because it's a lot harder to Photoshop video. Nowadays we can do
that
it.
one. Okay. Your cursor thing's been going round and round. Is he presenting it?
Myself, I am not presenting. No.
No, series. There he is. He's got it on now. Going low.
All right, so inspired by Chris doing his magnet light like a second ago with the lighter, I'm going to see whether or not it is influenced by the light. Just do you want to present me a sec, Karen? Oh, hang on.
Just wait to do it.
Hang on, I haven't shared my screen, have I? Share that one. Oh, I can't share that one, can I? Because it's got the link on it. Right, let me just move this.
Let this video play, Anthony. Let this video play and then do it.
Okay, no problem.
Oh.
I don't have any more of really what you got to the
That's pretty cool.
All right. And on the next one.
And that's for Elise, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be good to skip ahead to the video.
Yeah.
You saw where it paused for a second and took a photo there. That's the photo that we were looking at before.
There's a distinct
You're going
red
to
line.
show us then, Anthony.
I will. Do you want to present me? Let me know when
Sorry.
you're presenting. I need to see myself as well, so I get this lined up right. Can you see me now?
Slow. Come in. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This is one of the strongest magnets that I've come across. Magnets are always useful for different reasons. This is just a lighter. It's a normal lighter. And I'll hold it upwards just so that you can see that it is actually a magnet, and it'll just take it out. It should just take it out of my hand. Okay. So there's, I mean, it's a strong magnet, right? And I thought Chris was influencing the flame by pushing the air against the flame and then whipping it away, creating a vacuum. So I wanted to test it because I thought I'm sure that's manipulation. So what I want to do now is, I mean, literally, it'll hold the lighter in whichever position it wants. So if I light the thing and then hold it as vertical as I can, but without speaking into it, you see the flame's vertical, right? Watch as I move the flame down. I'm holding that as vertical as I can, but the flame's not vertical anymore. I don't know whether I'm holding it in the right position or not. It's being repelled. So if I hold it back up here, the flame's totally vertical. But then if I pull that down, can you see it's not vertical? I'm trying not to breathe on it.
Yeah, you can see it.
So it sits vertical there, or actually bending towards it there. And then put it there, bending away from it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now put it. Now take your magnet and put it on the end pole, and then just slow it, or just quickly oscillate the magnet back and forth, but very little bit, and you'll see how dramatically it influences the flame too from the end.
Give me the instruction again. Do what?
So light your lighter, then hold your magnet on the end pole pointed towards the flame. Right. Hold it horizontal. Hold your magnet on a horizontal plane. Just point it at the flame.
It's sticking to the metal clasp around it. It's sticking to that. Hang on, this is now hot. You'll have to give me a sec while I try it. But so you want me, so without lighting it, is that what you want me to do, like that?
No, hold your magnet on a horizontal, like level to the screen, to our view. There you go. And keep your flame at the end, on the end face of the magnet. So move your magnet, then Yeah, then you can just kind of move your magnet back and forth close to the flame, but don't interfere with the flame, but just kind of move it back and forth if you can. Then you'll see.
I'll try. It's wanting to repel. See, the thing is, my voice speaking is not easy.
Yeah.
So because I'm doing it right in front of my voice, but I'll do it without speaking, and I'll try and move it around and see if I can get it to influence without creating an air movement.
So.
I'm not sure that's doing it.
Yeah.
Might be that side. Let's try the other side. Ooh.
Yeah. It depends on the flux of the magnet, right? Where your flux line flux.
Yeah, I would say that might influence. All right, so the best way I found it was doing that. If I held it like that, so that it wasn't too close to it, it goes vertical. And then if I pull the magnet up, it's pushing it away.
Yep.
Vertical.
That's the cooling effect, right? So you're probably on the south pole, but yeah.
And that's not warm, but that's red hot.
Yeah.
So it was repelling it. I would agree. It does seem to validate up. It does seem to push the flame away.
Sure. Yeah. And that's the thermoelectric effect, right? Because you would think because your magnet is colder than the flame, typically the flame, heat should be attracted to cold. Heat always goes to cold. So because your magnet is pushing it away, it's the opposite effect.
I wonder what would happen if I passed a current through this and made it 2 volts, 4 volts, 6 volts, 8 volts. Would it make a difference?
Oh yeah, that's how we control plasma in plasma physics, right? You can put it in a magnetic field, you can do whatever you want with it, right? That's the basic physics behind the law that controls it. Yeah.
Just in case anybody's wondering what this magnet is, it's the inside of it's called MagnaClean, and it's something that you get in your heating, your central heating system. Mine blew up recently, so I've had to buy another one. And it says, warning, powerful magnetic field inside. Tighten to hand tight only. And it's probably the strongest magnet I've found without paying a lot of money for something specific. But
also be careful that you don't get the magnet too near your mic.
Or your computer, yeah, because it'll wipe your hard drive, right? Yeah.
Your mic will sometimes mic will get a high pitched resonation.
Yeah.
And I think
that's a very terrible sound to you.
I think Good Times for All is still in chat. Let me just see if he's still there. I need to turn off that because I don't need it. Right, let me see. Where's my chat window gone? Is it that one? No, it's that one. Is Good Times for All still in chat? Yes. Good Times. My partner's mum had a prowler in the back garden, and her gate only opens and locks from the inside. And she asked me to fit a padlock and clasp to the inside of the gate. Now, I didn't buy the padlock. Somebody else bought the padlock. I bought the clasp. So I went and fitted the clasp. And then when we put the padlock on the gate, before we put the padlock on the gate, I was playing around with my little tools and I was able to pick the lock in the padlock. It was great. And I did it in about 10 seconds as well. And I was like, if you know what you're doing with these locks, they're not that hard to break. Because I got this little lock picking set, and it was because of Good Times for All. He said, like, do you know you can pick locks quite easily? And I was like, really? You actually can? You've not thought of a way around that yet? And I agree completely. It's this padlock that was like, it was dead robust and it looked dead expensive and dead powerful, and literally within 10 seconds I managed to break it, and I was like, cool. It was good. So shout out to Good Times for All for showing me how to pick locks. As a hobby, of course, only.
Right, a bit of silence there.
So good night, all.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think it's time that we said good night. It's 10 to 1 now. So I hope everybody's enjoyed the evening. I was going to go around all of you, but I think that'll probably take quite a long time. Angel, will you come back next Sunday?
I think he's fell asleep. I think if he's still there, if he's listening, maybe if either Chris or Angel, or maybe Chris and Angel, could collaborate together and try and work out what unique property that pink granite's got that made it popular for them to use sparsely in particular places. Why were they using it? Because it seems interesting that they were using pink granite in the pyramids, or maybe they weren't, but I believe that they were. And it just so happens to be also in that thing that we were looking at last week. So if we could work out why pink granite was a weapon of choice, there's got to be a unique characteristic that we're not familiar with. So maybe if you two could work together and work it out, because I could research it myself, but you two have got much more. Huh?
The eclipse tomorrow, another really big day tomorrow for everybody.
Sure.
You know, Sun and Moon will be on tomorrow. I'm hoping to play Robert Forsh's live eclipse. Anyway, Anthony, thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm good for me.
It's good night from us. Back for the group hug then.
Yay.
Everybody come back for a group hug.
Let me flip the camera on. There we go. This feels so stupid.
It's nice.
It's nice. Where's Chris? Oh, there's Angel.
Chris is sitting in the door.
An artist can't. He hasn't got a camera.
No.
For a cigarette now. Chris, oh, there he is. Hey. Anyway, from everybody on Sun and Moon panel today, thank you for watching, everybody in the chat room, everybody just watching anyway. We'll be back tomorrow. Say goodbye. Oh, the hug.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Night, everyone. Love you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Snaps.
Giving the hugs. Anyway, see you tomorrow night then, everybody. Take care. Bye.